Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
I'm asking why you're in Tamara. Your mother told me you're trying to recruit someone, Lord Idris said. I'm here to check on him. She flinched, glancing at Arthur and Levi, realizing her scheme might no longer be under wraps. She knew her father cared deeply about his agency. No one was ever recruited without his approval. That ensured only daywalkers with great potential and dedication were brought in, keeping the agency's name untarnished. She thought he'd check on them during the assembly, as he should have been busy preparing for the upcoming major expedition. I brought him here to train, she said, pushing Arthur forward. Although he has SS potential, he's severely lacking in combat. He's never received any formal weapon training. I see, Lord Idris replied calmly. Come here, boy. Arthur had already been informed of the plan to secure a recommendation letter for his brother, and he had no intention of ruining it. He glanced once at Levi, then swiftly approached Lord Idris. Standing next to him, Arthur's towering figure was dwarfed for the first time in his life. Whoa, you weigh bigger than on TV. What kind of gym workouts do you do? Arthur asked absent-mindedly, eyes filled with admiration. Levi and the others twitched at the disrespectful tone, but Lord Idris didn't take offense. In fact, he smiled in amusement. He could tell Arthur was a gym rat, just like he had been in his youth. Gym weights no longer work for me. I'm almost maxing out the gym too, Arthur said, eyes sparkling. What kind of weights do you use now? I want in. When it came to weightlifting, Arthur couldn't care less about the status or reputation of the person in front of him. He treated them like a fellow lifter. Lord Idris didn't mind Arthur's casualness. He was a strong believer in gym culture himself. Inside the gym, status meant nothing, only the crushing weight and the shared goal to grow as swole as possible. Though he had left those days behind, the sentiment remained. For your age, you're quite big, Lord Idris admitted. But I doubt you can handle them. Bold assumption. I've never backed down from any weight in front of me. Arthur flexed his right bicep until the veins bulged, silently daring Lord Idris to underestimate him. Lord Idris smiled and threw his greatsword at Arthur's feet. Arthur looked down at it, and a sense of dread crept up his spine. It was understandable. The blade had sharp, shark-like teeth, and its body was crafted from thick black hide. Its handle was clearly molded to fit Lord Idris' massive hands. It was the epitome of a barbaric greatsword, made for slaying monsters. If you manage to lift it off the ground, I'll take you in as a trainee and supervise your growth personally for the assembly, Lord Idris offered. Really? Arthur exclaimed, ecstatic. Without hesitation, he grabbed the greatsword's handle with his right hand. A cold sensation coursed through his arm. Suddenly, a shark-like white eye popped open from the side of the handle, staring directly at him. Then the blade curled into a cold grin and taunted, "Don't drop me, kid." Arthur flinched, but steeled himself. He knew opportunities like this didn't come often. Joining the Bloodhunters Agency was one thing, but becoming Lord Idris' student, even if only for 2 months, was another. He could already envision the prospects waiting under his guidance. Alas, his dreams began to crumble as he failed to lift the greatsword again and again. He gave it everything he had, until his eyes turned bloodshot, but the greatsword didn't budge. It felt like trying to lift a truck. Arthur, give it up. He's messing with you. Fincho weighs more than a ton. Only freaks with my father's strength can lift him, Shia said, approaching with the others. Calling your dad a freak? How harsh. Lord Idris chuckled lightly. Unlike Madame Nima, Lord Idris might have seemed cold and stern, but he was actually a chill guy, if you ignored his obsession with eradicating every living nightcrawler on the planet. A ton? And he swings it like it's nothing. Levi was still processing the remark, eyes fixed on Lord Idris' sealed scarlet spiritual aura. It was tightly contained within his mountainous frame. He couldn't fathom the level of strength needed to achieve such physical absurdity. But at the same time, it made perfect sense. Lord Idris was one of the few infamous high-ranker daywalkers of the enhancement specialization. It was far easier to gain recognition as an elemental or psyche specialist than through enhancement. Sensing Levi's gaze, Lord Idris shifted his attention from Arthur. Since his contracted nightcrawler was summoned as a weapon, Lord Idris hadn't seen Levi in the Bridge of Darkness and was unaware of his condition. Still, he picked up on Levi's blindness from his behavior, which piqued his interest. Noticing her father's interest, Shia quickly stepped in to keep control of the conversation. "This is Levi Larson, the big brother of that muscle head," she said, without hiding her praise. "Believe me, without his amazing spiritual vision, we'd have been buried in the harrowing forest." "Is that so?" Lord Idris sized Levi up. "It's an honor to meet you, sir," Levi said, bowing slightly with respect. He had been told by Ashcrow that his spiritual aura would remain hidden unless it became too strong or he wanted it revealed. Still, the thought of Lord Idris figuring it out filled him with unease. Thankfully, it didn't seem like Lord Idris noticed anything. He withdrew his gaze and nodded with a faint smile. To possess such empowered spiritual vision at your age and without a contract, you have a bright future ahead of you. Are you also participating in the upcoming assembly? His compliment and question shocked everyone. Even Arthur froze mid-deadlift, glancing sideways. "Father, what are you talking about? How could someone blind become a daywalker?" Shia laughed awkwardly, trying to salvage the moment. If Levi showed interest in the assembly now, it would expose her entire scheme. If he lied and appeared later with their recommendation letter, things could end poorly. She'd rather be the one to take the hit for it. "Is that what you all think?" Lord Idris asked, scanning the room. Before Sergio or Jamal could respond, Arthur spoke with unfiltered conviction. "Not me. My big bro's going to be the greatest daywalker alive." "Eyes," he scoffed. "They tried to weaken him, but it's not enough. Nothing will be." Arthur glanced at his brother, then down at the greatsword. He lowered into a squat, perfectly positioned. As his brother, I'll be right there by his side. "Rise!" Before anyone could stop him, Arthur gripped the handle with both hands and roared, channeling every fiber of strength into the lift. To everyone's shock, blood trickled from his nose, and his biceps bulged to the brink of tearing, just as they were about to stop him from hurting himself. The greatsword moved. Only the hilt rose, barely 2 centimeters off the ground. It stunned not just Shia, Sergio, or Jamal, but even Lord Idris and his nightcrawler, Fincho. Only Levi wasn't surprised. He simply smiled proudly, watching his little brother with admiration. Thud! Arthur dropped the sword and stood still, back hunched, head lowered. Blood streamed from his nose. His eyes were as red as they could get. Slowly, he looked up, locking eyes with Lord Idris. In a raspy voice, he asked, "Does this count, or should I try again?" "Again." Lord Idris's smile widened. Then he broke into amused laughter. "A promise is a promise," he said, shaking his head. "It's passable at most." Sergio and Jamal's hearts skipped a beat. Arthur was going to be personally trained by Lord Idris after a single meeting. They'd been in the agency for 2 years and didn't even get their names remembered. Are you King kidding me? That was the only thought racing through their minds. "Shia, send him to HQ tomorrow morning," Lord Idris said, walking toward the door. As he passed Arthur, he made a small gesture and his greatsword flew back into his hand. He slammed it against his back, locking it into place without any harness. Just before leaving, he glanced back one final time and added casually, "Cute hair tips. Don't forget to give me a full report of your breakthrough." "Fine," Shia huffed, watching the door close behind him. After Lord Idris left them be, Levi helped his brother sit up and clean himself. From the thunderous rhythm of Arthur's heart, he could tell just how much effort had gone into pulling that greatsword. He had poured every ounce of strength into it, pushing well beyond his limits. "You did good," Levi praised. "I had to." Arthur gave a thumbs up with a foolish smile. He was about to expose us. At that, everyone raised an eyebrow in surprise. None of them had expected Arthur to be clever enough to deflect Lord Idris's probing like that. Still, it worked. Lord Idris had left without pushing further. She knew it was for the best. Even if he'd shown a flicker of interest in Levi, he wouldn't have recommended him. Each agency was only allowed to give out one recommendation letter. The bigger ones could give two at most. And in Lord Idris's case, someone had already claimed the second. He wouldn't be foolish enough to hand Arthur's letter to Levi. "You lucky dog. I can't believe Lord Idris is going to train you for 2 whole months," Sergio said as he stepped forward and smacked Arthur on the back. He tried to hide his jealousy, but it was obvious. Seeing his lord pick a citizen over him stung. Meanwhile, Jamal had Arthur in a playful headlock, his twig-like arms making it look like Arthur was wearing a black scarf. "You must be excited," Jamal gritted through his teeth, half joking, half burning with envy. He wanted nothing more than to choke Arthur out cold, but knew his arms would snap if he tried. I don't think I'll go." Arthur shook his head, almost twisting Jamal's arm in the process. Jamal froze. "What are you talking about?" Shia frowned. She might have resented her father's rigid expectations, but she still respected his power. A few moments of his guidance were more valuable than most would ever realize. Arthur had no idea how lucky he was, and yet he was planning to throw it away. It was beyond foolish. "I thought we'd train in tomorrow," Arthur said simply. "I'm not going to the capital and leaving my brother behind." "Arthie, I'll be fine on my own," Levi smiled, patting his brother's shoulder. "Go and learn as much as possible. Opportunities like this are rare. Most candidates would do anything to have them." "Are you sure?" Arthur asked, his brows knitting. "It's a whole 2 months. You think I won't survive 2 months without you?" Levi's tone sharpened. "Big bro, I'm worried you might overheat and pass out again from your cultivation." Arthur sent through ashtray eye. "I'll be fine." Levi smiled serenely, as if to say, "I'm not the same as before." Arthur fell quiet. He had seen it himself, how his brother now moved without a cane, how his eyes saw more than his own. Levi had told him about his new ability and how drastically it had improved his awareness. Still, Arthur knew that Levi liked to step out every now and then, and it would be harder without him. "How about you come with me?" "No, it's best I remain in tomorrow," Levi said with a shake of his head. He preferred the quiet of his apartment. It made cultivation and training easier. The capital would be too noisy, too distracting. Besides, if Levi came along, Arthur wouldn't be able to focus. He'd be too busy worrying about him. If you say so." In the end, Arthur relented. He knew better than anyone how stubborn his brother could be. When they finished their talk, Arthur turned to the silent group and asked, "So, are you going to show us your ultimate or not?" Everyone had always known the Larson brothers were close, but none of them had expected Arthur to willingly pass on a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity just to stay with his blind brother. It was a level of loyalty and love they simply couldn't fathom. For Levi and Arthur, though, it was nothing new. They had been orphans for as long as they could remember, raised by each other, protected by each other. The trials they had survived would have melted even stone. Sure," Shia finally said, pulling herself from her thoughts. She walked away from the group, her mind racing. The thrill of her perfect breakthrough had faded, replaced with something quieter, emptier. "What's the matter?" Bleeder asked softly. "I don't know," Shia lied. She did know. Deep down, she knew exactly what was wrong, but she couldn't say it, not even to her contracted partner. How could she admit that what the Larson brothers shared was her dream? A simple dream. To have a family's love. To know, without question, that someone would stand in her corner at all costs. Instead, her family was a machine. A corporate empire where affection was measured in results. Success granted status. Failure meant erasure. Levi and Arthur sought strength, authority, and legacy. Shia? She just wanted to be loved. Yet, that seemed more unattainable than any of their paths. She steeled herself, pushing the ache deep down, just like she'd been taught. Then, without a word, she summoned her crescent-bladed crimson glaive. Her hair began to crystallize at the ends, and her eyes turned a gleaming crimson. With one flawless upward sweep of her glaive, a wave of massive blood crystal towers erupted from the ground and charged the steel door. Boom! The towers slammed against the steel and surrounding walls, sending shockwaves through the room. If not for the shock-absorbing barriers, the entire training center would have been leveled. Shia lowered her glaive, popped a lollipop in her mouth, and walked away from the smoking scene. Her face was unreadable. Her short figure cast a massive shadow against the jagged blood towers, an image that captured the quiet, terrifying strength she kept hidden. Shia, that was awesome. Holy, now that's what I call an ultimate. Yeah, I so want a perfect evolution too. Sergio, Jamal, and Arthur rushed toward her, all grinning with awe. Shia smiled softly at their praise, though her heart wasn't in it. Then, a quiet voice reached her. It will be all right. She turned. Behind the others, Levi stood, leaning on his cane, his smile calm and reassuring. She blinked, startled. How had he known? There was no way he could read her thoughts. Yet everything about him, his words, his tone, his presence, it felt like he understood. She didn't know that Levi could hear her heartbeats, and with them, her emotions. His attunement to others was sharper than most would believe. From her silence and her pulse alone, he had sensed the shift in her mood. He didn't know exactly why, but he had known she needed reassurance, and he gave it. She stared for a long moment. Then she smiled, genuinely this time, and murmured, "Thank you." A short while later, Shia had taken care of the destruction she'd caused. With a wave of her hand, the towering, crystallized blood pillars broke apart into liquid form. Bleeder devoured the scarlet stream eagerly, storing it away for later use. Though solar energy was required to fuel and manifest abilities, once something was created, it remained. It was like converting solar energy into permanent matter through the shadow life seed's will. Had this not been the case, humanity wouldn't have rebuilt itself so swiftly in under a century. Many daywalkers had contributed to the recreation of raw materials. Iron, steel, glass, and more, reshaping the world in record time. Without their intervention, civilization would still be clawing its way through a post-apocalyptic wasteland. Instead, society now stood on the shoulders of daywalkers' governance, focusing on technological advancement and regional stability. Of course, the emergence of the solar Aegis sanctuaries had played a pivotal role in this resurgence, but that was a conversation for another time. Once the training room returned to its usual state, Shia gathered everyone in front of a pristine wall of smooth silver steel. Then, with a calm command, she said, "Open up the arsenal." With a soft hiss, the bottom of the wall split open and slid back, revealing a brilliantly lit display of weapons, each one resting neatly on angled ledges. Swords, spears, gauntlets, rifles, bows, pistols, dozens of weapons, each gleaming with readiness. Since daywalkers could wield nearly any weapon type, most agencies ensured their training centers were stocked with everything imaginable. The goal was clear: help future candidates discover the weapons that would eventually evolve with them, sometimes even becoming unique variants. "Arthur," Shia began, turning to him with a serious look, "I know you're training under my father starting tomorrow, but it's best you choose your weapon before then." "Why's that?" Arthur asked. Shia folded her arms. "Because he can be stubborn. I fear he might force a weapon on you under the pretense of knowing what's best." It wasn't an exaggeration. There were many lineage families where every member used the same weapon type, generation after generation. To some high-ranking daywalkers, free will was just a liability. Arthur grinned. "Don't worry. I already chose my weapon when I was 8. He walked confidently toward the wall, bypassing blades and guns, and stopped in front of a dusty, circular brown shield. Compared to the rest, it looked almost forgotten, untouched for years. He lifted it from its ledge and strapped it to his arm, turning back to face the group. With a big, foolish smile, he struck a dramatic pose. "How do I look? Dashing, right? A shield? You can't be serious?" Sergio's eyelids twitched. Jamal and Shia exchanged skeptical glances. It wasn't that shields were useless, but they weren't exactly seen as prime picks either. After all, they were called weapons for a reason, and a shield didn't quite qualify. "Yep, this is what I want," Arthur said with an easy smile as he dusted off the old shield. "I've always dreamed of wielding a massive shield, protecting my family and friends behind it." Silence followed. Then someone blurted out what they were all thinking. "Arthur, Are you really going to base your future on childhood dream? Everyone had once wanted to be a hero, to save the day, protect the innocent, and change the world. But most outgrew that fantasy, reshaping it into something more practical. Arthur, however, hadn't changed at all. It's best to give it up, Levi murmured with a smile. My brother chose his path a long time ago. Whether it's the best or not doesn't matter. It's his, and we should support him. He'd grown up watching Arthur pretend to be a superhero, cardboard shield in hand, a painted mask over his eyes. Levi had always known this day would come. Even Lord Idris wouldn't be able to sway him. So be it, she sighed. A shield it is. Then she turned to Levi. What about you? Have you chosen your weapon? Not yet. Levi's tone was calm. I'd like to test a few, if that's all right. Now that's what I like to hear. Shia led Levi back to the arsenal wall and began describing each weapon she thought he could use most effectively. To be honest, she said thoughtfully, tapping her chin, your condition makes things complicated. Most daywalkers with psyche specialization prefer ranged or abstract weapons that harness mental energy. But you can't really train with either right now. Levi nodded, fully aware of what she meant. His blindness made ranged weapons impractical, and the abstract weapons, crafted within the rooted plane and shaped by the psyche, weren't physical at all. Some looked like orbs, others instruments, even jewelry. Nothing he could train with in the physical world. Can I try a sword, staff, nunchucks, spear, glaive, and axe? He asked. I want to figure it out for myself. All right. Shia and the others gathered the requested weapons and laid them before him. All were dulled and sheathed, perfectly safe for practice. Thank you, Levi said, smiling. You can go help my brother now. This will take me a while. With that, they left him and returned to Arthur, gleefully teasing his shield choice as they resumed training. Levi sat on the ground, hands moving slowly over each weapon, using the low-pitched frequency he emitted to form faint images in his mind. He lifted each one in turn, testing their weight and balance. He started with the sword, then the staff, the axe, the glaive, the spear, one after the other, but none of them felt right. He stood and began swinging, moving with surprising smoothness for someone blind. She had glanced over, eyebrows raised. Not bad, she murmured. His spatial awareness and balance are better than I expected. Still, she turned back to Arthur. Levi had made it clear he wanted to figure it out alone. And if he wanted to join the assembly, he'd need to. Levi, meanwhile, was growing frustrated. The sword lacked audible reliability. It didn't make consistent contact with the ground. A huge problem for someone relying on sound. Close-range weapons like nunchucks and daggers were manageable, but too risky for a blind fighter who couldn't gauge sudden distance shifts. The spear, staff, and polearm worked better. Their long shafts scraped or tapped the floor, giving him sound feedback. But they came with a problem too, the 2-second transformation rule. Ashkral had warned him about it, how that slight delay could be fatal in battle. Eventually, Levi sat down again, setting the weapons in front of him with a sigh. He watched the others train, watched how Arthur handled the shield, how the others flowed with their chosen weapons like they were extensions of their very souls. Why don't I have that? He wondered. Why doesn't anything feel like mine? He ran his fingers absently over his white cane, folding and unfolding it, feeling the light rattle of its chain. Then he froze. An idea struck him, wild and absurd. What if I made a weapon with the form of a cane, but the strength of a staff? His heart began to race. It was insane, laughable even. He could already hear the others mocking it like they had Arthur's shield. But for the first time in a long while, the thought felt right. It felt like his. Levi held the training staff in one hand, his white cane in the other, his mind spinning with the possibilities of merging the two. The problem with a staff is its rigid form, he thought. It can only become a spear, a polearm, nothing more. It lacks adaptability. But a cane? A cane doesn't have that problem. With a flick of his wrist, Levi folded his cane into 3 neat segments and instantly snapped it back into a rigid pole. That smooth transition, swift, silent, efficient, was thanks to a core chain mechanism running through its hollow frame. It was simple but effective, and suddenly Levi saw its potential in a whole new light. What if I crafted a real weapon with that same mechanism? A reinforced staff, hollow inside, chain-threaded, ready to shift on command. His thoughts ignited. I could turn it into a bladed whip, a flail, a spear, an axe, a polearm, nunchaku, a billy club, even a single-edged or double-edged scythe. Levi's face brightened with each passing idea. The possibilities weren't just numerous, they were overwhelming. No, he wouldn't wield every form at once. But having access to such a versatile, instantaneously adaptable arsenal, that was 1,000 times better than being shackled to a single weapon. And the best part? He already knew the cane. He'd trained with it for over a decade, not as a weapon, but as an extension of himself. Its length, its weight, its rhythm, they were already second nature. While others spent years bonding with a blade or staff, Levi had unknowingly mastered the most important part: comfort and control. For a daywalker, nothing mattered more than becoming one with your weapon. This is it. With a quiet, determined smirk, Levi picked up the staff for now and walked toward his friends. His decision was made. Sometime later, Levi and Arthur returned home after a grueling training session with their friends. At one point, Shia asked Levi about his weapon choice, but he simply replied that he had a good feeling about it and didn't elaborate. Shia and the others didn't press him for details. Instead, they jumped straight into the basics, introducing exercises tailored to their chosen weapons. The drills were tedious, repetitive, and dull. But neither Levi nor Arthur complained. Levi welcomed any chance to learn something new, while Arthur's only real weakness was anything involving books or theory. Once home, Arthur headed straight for the shower while Levi sat down and called for Ashcrow through their mental link. "I've decided on my weapon. I want to craft it now," he said telepathically. "About damn time," Ashcrow replied with a lazy yawn. After confirming the area was clear of intelligent night crawlers, Ashcrow emerged beside him. The moment he appeared, his notorious aura radiated outward like a wave of invisible fire. Most of the intelligent night crawlers nearby immediately backed off, well aware of the threat he posed. In the past, Ashcrow didn't care much if they harassed Levi, as long as they left him alone. But that had changed. Now, he made it clear he didn't want them anywhere near Levi, and knowing he could erase them through the Bridge of Darkness was a warning they dared not ignore. "So, what have you decided on?" Ashcrow asked. "I'll show you." In the ancestral rooted plane, Levi responded, eyes gleaming with quiet. Levi sat in a meditative position and summoned his tattoo, pressing against the glowing crimson seed. Immediately, his consciousness was hijacked and thrown into the spiritual dimension of the seed. Even though Levi had seen it before, he couldn't help but gaze at the cosmic crimson tree in awe. Breathtaking as ever, he murmured, captivated, as he walked toward the already risen crafting platform. Facing the spinning crimson nonagon orb, Ashcrow tucked his tiny wings on Levi's shoulder and asked again, "So?" Levi began explaining his vision and how he believed it would ensure a smooth transition between forms. Ashcrow thought about it for a moment, then nodded. "Doesn't sound too bad." Levi's smile widened at the reassurance. Knowing Ashcrow's approval was the best stamp of quality he could ask for. Ashcrow stepped inside the nonagon orb and gestured. "Place your hand above the orb and imagine your desired weapon. The nine senses seed will handle the rest." Levi did as instructed, envisioning a 1.5-meter black staff with a chain core mechanism running from end to end. He designed it to split into 5 small parts, but then changed it to 4, thinking 5 was too many. Sensing his hesitation, Ashcrow advised, "Create the base version. You can modify it later." "Oh, I didn't know that was possible." Levi raised an eyebrow. He had read that once a weapon blueprint was submitted, there were no redos, no takebacks. It was final until they gained access to their awakened weapon. It's one of the seed's small perks. "Now, make contact," Ashcrow said, waving a wing dismissively. Levi focused on the weapon again and pushed his hand into the orb, touching Ashcrow's wing. The moment contact was made, The crimson nonagon orb spun wildly and exploded in a blinding flash of light that lasted less than a second. When the light faded, Ashkral was gone. In his place stood a long, dark wooden staff. Levi gripped it at the center, feeling the rugged texture of the wood under his fingers. As he pulled it free from the orb, he noticed millions of tiny, engraved crimson inscriptions running along its surface. They were so finely etched, no one would notice unless they were as close as Levi. When he gave it a slight shake, he could feel the tension of the chains hidden within. "Looks quite neat." Levi smiled in satisfaction and swung it behind his back. But when he brought it in front of his face, he got the scare of the day. The dreadful, crimson-slitted eye of Ashkral had emerged near the staff's edge. "Go down and get a proper feel for it," Ashkral's voice echoed. "As long as you don't leave the ancestral-rooted plane, the weapon won't be crafted." "Good to know." Levi landed softly on the still water below, sending ripples outward but never sinking. "Let's try some of what I learned today." He gripped the staff from the bottom and began swinging it up, down, left, right, getting a feel for its balance. He even performed a few simple tricks like a child playing with a broomstick. While he was enjoying himself, a wide grin formed on the staff surface. Then, without warning, the top part of the staff detached and smacked Levi square in the face. "Ark!" Levi dropped the staff and clutched his nose with a pained expression. Despite being in spiritual form, the pain felt entirely real, proof of the deep connection between body and soul. "Looks like your concept works," Ashkral said solemnly, feigning ignorance. "Asshole, I know that was you," Levi cursed while massaging his nose. "I just wanted to check if the chain mechanism worked," Ashkral coughed. Levi ignored him and picked up the staff. Then, without hesitation, he smashed it into the still water and held it submerged, seemingly trying to drown Ashkral. "BL. Help! My partner is waterboarding me," came Ashkral's muffled cries from below, sounding like music to Levi's ears. Soon, the cries turned into chuckles, irritating Levi even more. He pulled the staff out, knowing full well he wasn't hurting Ashkral. "For being claiming to have lived for eons, you play 2F* king much. You know nothing," Ashkral laughed. "Childlike joy is the key to longevity. Whatever you say." Levi didn't buy it. He knew Ashkral was just excusing his assholish personality. "What do you think about the chain mechanism?" Levi asked, separating the staff into 4 parts and pulling them apart. The chains were tight, limited in length by the staff's own stature. Since he had copied the cane's chain mechanism exactly, the length couldn't exceed that of the staff. This meant the chain feature would only become useful after adding other weapon variations, something that bothered him. He wanted his first weapon to feel complete, not decorative. "HM, how about you increase the chain length and store the excess at both ends of the staff?" Ashkral offered calmly. "Oh, that's an interesting idea, but will it really work?" The current mechanism depends on the chains having a precise length to keep the staff stable. Levi pulled the chains taut to demonstrate what he meant. In his mind, adding more would loosen the internal system and make the staff unreliable. "You're limiting your imagination to physical logic," Ashkral reminded him. "This isn't a real weapon. It's me reshaped into one. You can control internal mechanics as long as you don't add entirely new components." Levi paused, realizing he had been thinking in rigid terms. In truth, he only needed to respect some laws of physics, not all. "If that's the case, can you lock the excess chain with a mechanism under my control?" "Yes." Levi didn't wait. He rushed back to the platform and made the changes. After another flash of light, the new version of the staff appeared. It looked almost identical, except the ends were now thicker and wrapped in crimson root-like engravings. Levi loved the new appearance, though he immediately noticed the weight had increased. Still, it wasn't an issue. He'd grow strong enough to make it feel like a feather. Back on the water, he snapped both ends open. The thick sections dropped, pulling out a long, crimson-rooted chain. Only once a small pile formed at each edge did the chains tighten. Levi held the staff at the center, smiling widely as he gazed at the dangling ends. This is it. He didn't even need to test it further. He knew this was the missing piece. Still, He willed the chain's retraction to confirm everything worked. Whoosh! The chain shot back inside the thick ends like anchors reeling in. Once the excess was stored, a small wooden compartment latched shut, locking them in place. The staff returned to its solid form in less than a second. Satisfied? Very. If you still want more modifications, it's not too late. No. Levi shook his head. The staff is the perfect balance of complexity and simplicity now. More would only ruin it. Good. Ashcrow smiled, pleased. Still, Levi spent a few more minutes swinging and fooling around with his weapon before stepping onto the platform one final time. He placed the staff into the nonagon orb. I have chosen my signature weapon, and it will be called... He paused, searching deep within himself for a name that matched the weapon's soul. Then, the memories returned, scenes from that cursed night. Every second, every scream, every horror replayed in his mind. His expression darkened, and his voice dropped to a whisper. Judgment's chain staff, he added coldly. I'll use these chains to bind the ones who destroyed my family, and this staff to shatter their bones to dust. I'll bring down my judgment on all who stand with them. This I swear. The moment the final word left his lips, the name Judgment's chain staff was seared in glowing Ilthorian script at the base of the staff, forever marking its creation. Levi had officially become a true daywalker. The next morning, she had called Arthur and informed him she was waiting downstairs. Arthur had already packed his suits and was sitting beside his brother, waiting for the call. She's here, Levi smiled, his enhanced hearing easily picking up Shia's voice through Arthur's earpiece. Arthur wasn't bothered. Levi had already told him his main evolutionary trait was related to sound. If he hadn't seen what his brother could do with echolocation, he wouldn't have felt at peace, leaving him alone for 2 whole months. They had been together ever since their parents were murdered, and this would be the first time they'd be apart for so long. Go already. You know how thin Shia's patience is, Levi said as he gave Arthur a small shove toward the door, luggage in hand, after sensing the shift in his heartbeat. Fine, I'm going. Arthur grabbed his bag and opened the door. Before stepping out, he turned around with a solemn expression. I'm going to work my ass off these next 2 months. I don't know about you, but my goal hasn't changed. I'm aiming for the #1 rank in the Contract Ritual Assembly. How surprising. I'm aiming for it too, Levi chuckled. Though already a daywalker, Levi wasn't joining the assembly just to disguise his awakening. The Contract Ritual Assembly was one of the most anticipated events of the year. Beyond being a stage for the chosen to shine, the top 5 contestants would receive rewards capable of drastically accelerating their evolutionary path. The bottom 2 rewards were modest, just a few hundred solar Aegis coins and a minor discount at the Grand Training Center. But the top 3 were truly valuable. Third place received 1,000 coins and a 10% discount for 6 months. Second place got 2,000 coins and a 15% discount. But first place, the first ranker would earn 5,000 solar Aegis coins and a 30% discount for an entire year. To put it in perspective, Levi nearly lost his life in the harrowing forest and barely walked out with materials worth 1,000 coins. The 30% discount alone could save more than that in the long run, and every major agency knew it. That's why they pushed their candidates to aim for the top prize. It was worth more than gold. Then I'll see you at the top, Arthur grinned, holding out a fist. Not if you fail the intelligence trials, Levi smirked, bumping his fist. At least I won't get beat up on national TV. Arthur shot back with a grin, dragging his suitcase behind him as he walked away. Levi watched from the door, smiling faintly. Though they constantly roasted each other, there was nothing he wished more than success for his younger brother. He knew Arthur was full of potential that only someone like Lord Idris could truly unlock. That's why he insisted Arthur go, knowing he'd come back 10 times stronger after 2 months apart. Levi stepped to the window and watched his brother's figure enter the car. Then they were off, heading for the capital. As the sound of the vehicle faded from his auditory field, Levi murmured to himself with a smirk, "We'll see who ends up doing the beating." Time flowed like a rich river pouring into the sea, steady, unstoppable. Before anyone realized it, the contract ritual assembly was just a day away. In those 2 months, or slightly less, Levi had been dragged through hell and back under Ashkrell and Shia's relentless training. He spent nearly 5 hours a day mastering the basics of staff combat under Shia's sharp eye. The rest of his time was devoted to cultivating his power and honing his weapon. Because summoning his staff outside wrist exposure, Ashkrell had taught him a trick: how to keep the ancestral-rooted grounds open by not unlocking the next innate ability. After reaching the second stage of his 9 senses seed evolution, Levi deliberately ignored the blooming nonagon flower above his head, brimming with glowing abilities, and remained on the still ocean under Ashkrell's mentorship. The seed didn't care whether he claimed his reward or not, but Ashkrell had warned him. He could perfectly erase his spiritual aura only while remaining in the second stage or lower. If he advanced further, he'd risk being sensed by perceptive beings, like the Willow Grove. Since the assembly was taking place in the Solar Aegis Sanctuary, surrounded by powerful entities, it was better to play it safe. Though he halted cultivation, Levi used his free moments to try sensing the dark energy flowing through the bridge of darkness. So far, it remained elusive. On the upside, his combat abilities had skyrocketed under Ashkrell's brutal training. Even when his mentor was at his most insufferable, the results spoke for themselves. Now, Levi stood at the center of his apartment, clad only in his boxers, rehearsing a flowing combat form with a sleek black training staff. He had cleared out the furniture, turning the living room into his personal dojo. Ting! The staff tapped gently against the floor, but the sound shot through the room like a sonar pulse. Levi used the wave like a second set of eyes, sweeping the floor with a leg before launching into a spinning airborne kick. As he landed, he fired off another echolocation pulse to map out the space and continued his fluid motion. He knew echolocation consumed solar energy from his 9 senses seed. Just like everyone else, he had to pay for each use. The difference? His tank was enormous. The 9 senses seed was both a ravenous glutton and a monstrous reservoir, giving Levi room to burn energy like no one else in his rank. Even so, he knew the assembly would stretch across several days. He couldn't afford to waste power. He needed to learn how to use his energy wisely, to be precise. Without echolocation, he'd be fighting blind. Literally. Ha! Ting! Ho! Ting! Levi spun and moved with sharp, graceful power, his messy brown hair falling over his eyes. Under the morning rays of the holy light, his skin glistened with sweat. He looked almost like a superb bird of paradise performing a mating ritual, if that bird had abs and a battle staff. Too bad the only thing he attracted was the wrath of the neighbors 1 floor below. Thud! 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 You noisy F***er. Stop jumping around. It's 5 in the morning, for God's sake. Levi paused mid-form, ears twitching at the muffled curses and the dull thud of a broomstick smacking the floor from the apartment below. I guess I've been a bit annoying this past month. He smiled apologetically as he sat down on the wooden floor, acknowledging the patience his neighbors had shown. By all accounts, he'd been a model nuisance, regularly practicing combat forms every night for weeks. Yet they'd rarely complained until now. Still, Levi suspected their silence came less from tolerance and more from fear. A blind man in their world was a ticking time bomb, one step away from becoming a sleepwalker. If it weren't for that stigma, they would have either complained in person or called the cops long ago. That was the quiet power of wearing an ankle monitor in this new society, a warning label people took very seriously. After a short rest, Levi headed to the shower. When he finished, he dressed in his usual clothes and emptied half his closet into a single large suitcase. He slid it to the side and moved on to breakfast, his motions smooth and ordinary, eerily so. No hesitation, no fumbling, no wasted movement. To a stranger watching, he didn't look blind at all. His head always turned toward what he was doing, like he could see it clearly. But this wasn't about pretending to be normal. Levi didn't care about blending in for vanity's sake. He simply wanted to avoid drawing attention during the upcoming recruitment phase. Faking sight was a survival tactic. He cooked a simple breakfast, omelet, buttered crispy toast, and a cup of minted tea, then stepped out onto the balcony with his plate and settled beside a small table. As he ate, a faint smile touched his lips. Above him, hundreds of monstrous creatures soared through the skies over the vibrant, wavy sprawl of the city. The noise, the scent of morning dew and steam, the sharp warmth of his tea, the chaotic skyline. It was all perfectly imperfect. "I'm going to miss this peacefulness," Levi murmured, taking a small sip and savoring the view for just a while longer. Levi was sitting on a train with Shia, heading toward the capital city. Sergio and Jamal couldn't stay with him every day. They still had their duties as agency combatants. Shia, on the other hand, was the daughter of the leader and the second in command. She operated under a different kind of privilege. After a short while, the train arrived at the station, where a personal chauffeur was already waiting. Levi wasn't surprised. Shia clearly enjoyed taking the train, even though she could have easily had someone drive her straight to the capital. "You're still planning on staying alone?" Shia asked as they got into the luxurious car. "Yes." Okay." Shia didn't pry. There was something in his expression that told her not to. She simply sent the address to the chauffeur, who merged into the sea of never-ending cars. Heliodor's capital was a pulsating heart of life. People, vehicles, towering buildings, agencies, daywalkers, everything. Overcrowded, yes, but held together by impressive infrastructure that maintained a fragile balance. Unlike the chaos of the outer settlements, glass skyscrapers stretched in every direction, built for corporations, lineage families, and private agency headquarters. But instead of heading deeper into the capital, the chauffeur took a detour toward the outskirts to the suburban zones. Here, space was precious. There were no slums, no cheap homes. If someone couldn't afford to live in the capital, they settled outside it. Simple as that. Soon, the car pulled up in front of a gated residential block. About 100 modest apartments arranged in square buildings. Compared to uptown villas and southern housing complexes, this was considered bottom-tier housing for the capital, and still 5 times more expensive than anywhere outside it. "We've arrived at the gate," the chauffeur said. "Thanks for the lift." Levi gave a respectful nod and moved to step out. She had gently caught his arm. "Want me to walk you to the apartment?" Levi shook his head, wearing a polite smile. "I've already stolen enough of your time. I don't dare ask for more." He knew Shia had more important things to do than spend 5 hours a day training him over the last 2 months. That she had done it anyway said a lot about her character. "Don't see it that way. It wasn't a waste. I had fun training you," Shia said with a grin. "I never imagined I'd train someone blind to be a daywalker and not be disappointed by the results." "I'm glad," Levi chuckled. "If you really want to repay me, kick some ass in the assembly." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Especially Mantis' little brother, Demetrius. I heard he's signing up." "What did Mantis do to you?" Levi raised an eyebrow. "It's a long story, but I can't stand that prick," Shia clicked her tongue. "His little brother's supposed to be one of the top rising talents in Sunstrike Agency. I doubt he's any better." "Well, I'll see what I can do." "No promises." Levi smiled wryly. He wasn't planning to carry out Shia's vendetta, but if Demetrius crossed his path, he wouldn't hesitate either. "Take care. We'll be cheering you on tomorrow," Shia said with a playful smile, blowing him a soft kiss as she drove off, knowing full well he couldn't see it. Unbeknownst to her, Levi's sensitive ears picked up on the subtle gesture, and he couldn't help but chuckle as he walked into the residential complex. At the gate, his Neuralens device was scanned. As a previous resident, he was granted access without question. A few minutes later, Levi stood in front of his Uncle Rob's old apartment and knocked twice. No answer. He focused his hearing inside. Nothing. He pulled out a spare key and unlocked the door. Click. The second he opened it, a foul stench of alcohol and rotting trash assaulted his senses, forcing him to pinch his nose shut. "What a mess. I should have come earlier to clean this up," Levi muttered, using his voice to send out a mapping pulse. In an instant, the apartment appeared in his mind, small, tight, filled with bags of trash and debris. But what made his expression sharpen was the sight of broken furniture. Sigh. I wish it had ended differently, he murmured as he stepped inside the wreckage and shut the door behind him. Levi rolled up his sleeves and got to work. This wasn't his uncle's place. Not really. It had belonged to his late parents, just like Tamara's apartment. Both were part of the modest inheritance he and Arthur received after their deaths. If Uncle Rob hadn't been such a gambling addict, their parents might have left him something too. But they knew it would vanish in a casino faster than a heartbeat. Unfortunately, they hadn't anticipated dying early, leaving Rob as guardian of the children and trustee of their estate until Levi came of age, 16 years old, in a new society. To his credit, Rob had tried. Their deaths sobered him up, at least for a while. He cleaned himself up, took care of the boys, and spared no expense on Levi's eye surgeries. They had failed, but no one could say he didn't try. Still, the dildo of consequences rarely arrived lubed. Rob's gambling addiction came roaring back. The debts piled up. These weren't friendly loans or bank agreements. They were from sharks. And when they heard he had access to an inheritance, they came knocking. Rob turned to the boys, asking permission to sell some properties. Legally, he couldn't do it without their consent and court involvement. Levi was only 11 and naive. All he wanted was to save his uncle. So he said yes. Properties were sold. Debts were paid. Everyone was happy. Wrong. Rob relapsed harder than ever. He started eyeing Levi's welfare checks. In this age, beating addiction was nearly impossible. Night crawlers were always around, always waiting to drag your guilt into your dreams. Levi didn't know if Rob had been manipulated or if he'd just fallen apart on his own. He didn't care. At 15, Levi moved out with Arthur and relocated to Tamara's apartment. They knew staying would destroy them, and neither of their futures could afford that. Since then, they hadn't spoken to Rob or helped him financially, not until he truly cleaned up. He was a screw-up, but he was still family. They had a soft spot for him, especially after all he did in their darkest times. Sadly, when Levi tried to check up on him, Rob had already vanished. Calls went unanswered. No leads. No sightings. In this society, disappearing was easier than dying. Levi hoped it was the former. He didn't want to lose anyone else. But there wasn't much he could do to search for him. After a few grueling hours and the help of Astra AI, the apartment was clean. The trash was gone. The ruined furniture was removed. Levi clapped his hands once, twice, and used the sound waves to scan the space. Empty. Clean. This'll do for now, he said quietly. Levi took a quick shower for the second time that day, and as he stepped out, he was greeted by the sight of a gigantic humanoid rhino heading straight toward him. The creature's body was covered in shimmering, crystallized rock, making him look like an armored statue sculpted from gemstones. His singular horn was long and curved inward, almost as if trying to pierce his own skull. His spiritual aura was so well contained, it leaked almost nothing. Levi narrowed his eyes, preparing himself for what he assumed would be more trouble. To his dumbfounded surprise, "Hello there, child," the rhino greeted with a polite smile. "Hello," Levi replied, waving awkwardly. "Would you be so kind as to direct me to this region's contract ritual assembly?" the rhino asked with a sheepish grin. "I'm truly terrible with directions." Levi pointed behind him in silence. "Ah, looks like I was on the right path." "Greatly appreciated." The rhino gave a respectful nod and continued walking until he vanished from Levi's spiritual field of sight. Levi lowered his head in mild confusion. Doesn't he know he can use the contract serial number to access the assembly? Also, were nightcrawlers always this polite? Recalling the torment he had endured at the hands of others like Ashcrow, he couldn't help but chuckle dryly. "Well, would you look at that? A meta-unicorn," Levi muttered, sighing. "Someone's going to be lucky to have him as a partner. Unlike me. I think I heard someone be asterisk ching." Out of nowhere, Ashcrow's malicious voice echoed from behind Levi. When he turned around, he found a little creature flapping his tiny wings, his singular eye narrowed to the limit. "You heard wrong." Levi coughed, quickly changing the subject. "I only have half a day before the assembly. Do you think it's best to unlock the second ability now?" "You can, but I doubt you'll be able to use it," Ashcrow replied lazily. "Don't forget, You ain't a daywalker in their eyes, and it's best to keep it that way. Levi thought for a moment. Unlocking it now might help in emergencies, but then it hit him. He'd be fighting non-daywalkers. Some of them might be tough, sure, but he was a daywalker. Did he really need a second ability to handle civilians? That thought alone made him feel ashamed. I'm already signed up, so I've got nothing to lose, Levi told himself, steeling his heart. Echolocation is the only ability I need. If I still lose, it means I need to improve myself, not stack cheats. Ashcrowl simply smiled and said nothing. The next morning, Levi had finalized his preparations and eaten his breakfast. Without waiting for anyone, he left the apartment and headed straight to the recruitment center in a taxi. He carried only his smooth, black metallic staff and a backpack filled with essentials. He had called Arthur the day before to check on him. Lord Idris still wasn't finished with his training, and Arthur had said they'd meet again at the assembly itself. Levi could only smile sympathetically, not even wanting to imagine the kind of hell his brother was being put through. After a 15-minute ride, the driver dropped him off near a massive crowd of people ranging in age from 14 to 26. 3 long queues wound in front of a modest government office, the recruitment center, and the first blockade on the path to becoming a daywalker. Usually, nearly all young people within that age range qualified, as the requirements weren't that strict. 2-time repeat limit. Must be under 26. No serious criminal record. No major mental instability. Definitely no ankle monitor wearers. Simple conditions, meant to give most children a fair shot without needing connections or wealth. But for Levi, that last condition had always been a wall. As long as he wasn't a daywalker and remained blind, the ankle monitor wasn't coming off. That monitor made him ineligible, until now. He focused his hearing, filtering out irrelevant sounds until he picked up a specific street noise behind the crowd. Using it to map the area, he made his way toward an empty curb and sat down, resting his backpack on his lap. He waited silently, surrounded by families, friends, and supporters of the candidates. The recruitment process usually lasted about 2 hours at most. With 3 recruiters and Neuralens scanning tech, things moved fast. They only needed to scan a device and confirm a candidate's public records. If everything checked out, they were in and sent straight to the Solar Aegis Sanctuary. Levi was waiting for the final moments of the recruitment window. The later he went in, the fewer eyes and the less drama. As for Arthur, lineage candidates like him were processed privately. Since Levi was technically one of them, sponsored by a lineage, Shia had taken it upon herself to shield both brothers during recruitment. A lot of effort had gone into making sure Levi slipped through the cracks. Eventually, the serpentine lines vanished. Most applicants were accepted and sent toward the sanctuary, faces split between excitement and dread. A few were turned away, shoulders sagging as they left in silence. It's the moment of truth. Levi exhaled deeply and stood up. His posture straightened, head held high, black circular glasses hiding his unseeing eyes. To any observer, he didn't look blind at all. He entered the office and used echolocation to guide himself toward the booths. 2 were already closed. Only the central one remained staffed. Levi walked up and gave a polite smile. I'd like to participate in the contract ritual assembly. The recruiter was an older man, full white beard, deep-set wrinkles, and a bald spot he tried to hide by styling the rest of his hair backward. Yet, it still gleamed under the harsh lighting. Name? The man asked, clearly impatient. He'd nearly finished his shift and was moments away from joining his co-workers for coffee, until Levi walked in. Levi instantly recognized the man's voice. He was the same recruiter who had thrown him out alongside Arthur last year. Still, he kept his face neutral. Levi Larson. The recruiter paused. The name stirred something in his memory. Is this your second attempt? No. I see. The man didn't dwell on it. He dealt with hundreds of faces and names each year. They blurred together. But when he pulled up Levi's public record, his eyes widened. It's you again. I knew I recognized you, the recruiter snapped. Brat, haven't you wasted enough of my time last year? Why are you back again? You told me to come back with either a recommendation letter or a miracle that restored my sight. Levi said calmly. Check your inbox. He forwarded an official file via Astro AI. The recruiter was already reaching for security when his screen lit up with a signed recommendation letter. At first, he assumed it was fake, but as he skimmed through the document and saw the Morningstar insignia, his jaw slackened. You got the Morningstars to sponsor you? You? Yes, me. Levi smiled faintly. Got a problem with that? No, I was just looking out for you, the man stammered, his tone shifting completely. You don't know how brutal the trials can get. Someone like why? I'll stop you right there, Levi cut in smoothly. I've got a signed letter, and I also have Shia Morningstar's number. If you got a problem, I can call her. You can explain to her why her family sponsor candidate didn't make it into the assembly on time. No. No need to bother Miss Shia with such things. The recruiter stood up, sweating, flustered. He quickly approved Levi's application and forwarded a copy to his inbox. Levi had Astra read it aloud, just to verify, then gave a nod and walked off toward the Solar Aegis Sanctuary. The recruiter stared after him, torn between calling the authorities or contacting someone inside the Morningstar family. A reward might be involved, or at least some clout. Then he sighed. Since the letter was legit, whatever happened next wasn't his problem. As a senior civil servant nearing retirement, he wasn't about to get involved in something that might jeopardize his pension. If someone in the Morningstar family had issued that letter, that was their business. Poking around would only get him in trouble. I don't get paid enough for this crap. He shut down his booth and left to join his peers for coffee, not even mentioning what had just happened. Unbeknownst to either of them, the moment Levi's name was registered, a signal was sent to a very interested party. As expected, Shia really tried to pull a fast one on us, Lord Idris said with a sip of tea. He was seated at a small table on the rooftop garden, enjoying the sunlight with his wife. If it weren't for your visit to Damara, we wouldn't have known until it was too late, Madame Nima replied, a tinge of disappointment in her voice for her daughter. Sponsoring a blind candidate to appear on national TV? Their lineage's image would be humiliated. I disagree, Lord Idris said, recalling his first meeting with Levi. The boy hadn't impressed him with action, but there was something else. A hunger, a fire, a quiet, dangerous potential. For people like him, disabilities aren't weaknesses. They're fuel, Idris said, smiling. Let the boy compete. If he succeeds, great. If he fails, we still have Arthur. If we reject him now, we might lose them both. In public opinion, Naima asked, frowning. Darling, have you gotten too caught up in politics? Idris said with a shrug. Public opinion? Since when have we ever cared for that? Let them laugh. Our family will remain untouched. Our agency will stay at the top. Naima stared at her husband, then laughed softly. She realized she had, in fact, grown soft. Too many years behind a desk had dulled her edge. I think I'll be joining you on the next expedition, she said, a dangerous glint in her eyes. Time to warm up my blood again. Really? Huh. Now that's some good news. Lord Idris grinned, eyes gleaming with delight. A short while later, Levi had arrived at the Solar Aegis Sanctuary, located at the very heart of the Heliodor Holy Region. Unlike the jungle of concrete and glass around it, the sanctuary stood inside a colossal ancient tree. Its enormous trunk bore the scars of time as it rose defiantly amidst the concrete labyrinth. Though its size rivaled that of its neighboring skyscrapers, its massive brown branches reached outward like a forgotten divinity, twisting gently around steel and glass. It was as if the tree were a sentinel, growing with perfect awareness, never disturbing the structures around it. As for its leaves, they were nothing short of a masterpiece. Known as celestial crescents, they were unlike ordinary foliage. Each leaf resembled a crescent moon, with a single elegant spiral unfurling from a stem. Under the sunlight, their surface shimmered with hues of gold, silver, and emerald, as if brushed by stardust. The willow grove, how I wish I could see you again, Levi murmured with a wistful smile, using the noise of the crowd to shape the tree in his mind. Despite his best efforts, Willow Grove's image returned hazy and chaotic. Sound waves could never capture its true, ancient beauty. He remembered sitting beneath the Savior's tree every Saturday, brought there by his parents, Arthur was always at his side, both of them laughing and running with other kids, untouched by the weight of the world. To Levi, the tree was sacred. It wasn't just a landmark. It was the reason the region still stood strong after more than a century. If the Heliodor region were a living body, the Willow Grove was its heart. And if that heart were to die, the heavenly light pillar protecting the city would flare in wrath and reduce everyone beneath it to ash in seconds. That's why the government enforced the 30% crystallized seed offering, the Savior's tax. Most daywalkers didn't complain because they knew the Grove's survival depended on it. As a dimensional entity from the upper realms, the Willow Grove couldn't feed on water or soil. At least, that's what every child was taught. Respect for the grove was etched into them from the moment they could speak. Now a massive crowd had gathered at the base of the tree, or more specifically, at the threshold of the Solar Aegis Sanctuary. The sanctuary was the only entity allowed to occupy space inside the Willow Grove. Not even the government dared to challenge it. Around the world, the Solar Aegis sanctuaries were revered. They were the only link to the radiant entities. If they pulled back their divine pillars, the world would be left at the mercy of night crawlers. If the government served the people, the sanctuaries were the royalty watching over them. Luckily, Heliodor's sanctuary and the local government got along well enough. The sanctuary allowed the state to host its biggest events here, in exchange for a hefty payment in crystallized seeds. Not cheap, but worth every drop. Levi moved past the throngs and ascended the wide white marble stairs leading to the enormous hollow entrance at the base of the grove. When he reached the guarded section where civilian sheriffs kept order, he was stopped at once. "Show approved application or back off," the sheriff warned. He wore a dark blue uniform with black boots and a belt, armed with the same wooden firearm used by anti-sleepwalker officers. Levi calmly forwarded his approved application and motioned toward the sheriff's inbox. The sheriff checked his holographic display, brows raising slightly. Levi's application was valid, and he was sponsored. "Please, enter from here." With a respectful nod, the sheriff pulled aside the railing and let him through. Levi climbed the circular staircase under the watchful gaze of the crowd. "Good luck, boy. You got this. Make us proud and come back with a contract. We're rooting for you." Levi smiled faintly at the voices. For the first time, he felt what it was like to be truly supported. Not because he was special, but because in this region, daywalkers were revered. They hunted night crawlers and harvested the seeds that kept everyone alive. Without them, the Willow Grove would fall, and the people along with it. It had already happened elsewhere. Entire holy regions turned to dust. At the final step, Levi paused. Then he braced his right leg and stomped down on the mirror-smooth marble. A sonic wave erupted, washing into the grove and feeding him a full map of its interior. What returned nearly stole his breath, not out of fear, but excitement. Over 200 humanoid auras filled the chamber, grayed out and scattered in every direction. All of them had turned toward him, the newcomer standing alone in the massive open threshold. After a moment, they turned back to whatever they were doing, unaware of Levi's true condition. "Here we go." Levi drew in a steady breath and stepped into the hall, his serene smile intact. But it didn't last. "Big bro, haha, you made it." Arthur's voice thundered through the solemn space. Levi's eyelid twitched as everyone turned toward him again, and to the approaching hurricane that was his brother. While Levi couldn't see him directly, his senses told him enough. Arthur's muscles had shrunk slightly, not for neglect but refinement. He had worked himself to the brink, compacting his body into something leaner, deadlier, more efficient. Just as Arthur lunged forward for a hug, Levi's instincts flared. Without thinking, he slipped sideways and lightly tapped Arthur's head with the end of his staff. It looked like nothing, but a few candidates caught it. Levi did it without even facing him. "Do you have to be so loud?" Levi muttered. "You're in a sacred place. Try not to get us kicked out." "Oh, my bad. I just missed you, man." Arthur rubbed his head, grinning as he offered a fist bump. Levi tapped it. "I missed you too. The place has been way too quiet without you." "Uh-huh. I know I leave a good presence everywhere I go." Yes, yes. If Levi had eyes, he would have rolled them so hard they'd rattle. Arthur had probably flipped the entire Bloodhunters agency upside down. Loud, shameless, and utterly himself. And now, in a room full of silent, serious candidates, he still didn't care. Come, come, let me introduce you to some of my new friends. Arthur tugged him toward a small group huddled beneath a twisted white staircase, spiraling upward. The staircase led to the uppermost floors within Willow Grove, where a significant portion of the tree's hollow interior had been converted into housing quarters for the sanctuary. Hovering at the center of the spiral staircase's shaft was a wooden platform, adorned with massive Ilthorian inscriptions carved across its surface. It hovered gently, like a natural elevator pulsing with arcane energy. Just like the staircase and the floating lift, the rest of the sanctuary's interior was either sculpted directly from the tree's trunk or crafted with meticulous artistry meant to harmonize with the living wood. The smooth marble flooring blended seamlessly with the organic surroundings. Altogether, the atmosphere was cozy, serene, and steeped in a quiet reverence, befitting of the ancient tree's name, Willow Grove. When they arrived at a small gathering nestled near the base of the spiraling staircase, Arthur clapped his hands together and began his introductions. After naming each person with the same enthusiasm as a show host, he grinned proudly and gestured toward Levi. This is my big brother, Levi, the one I've been telling you all about. The trio before them consisted of 2 girls and 1 boy, each contract seeker with their own energy and presence. Hello, Levi greeted politely. Thank you for looking after my little brother. You're welcome. He's quite a handful, Melissa replied with a small laugh. She had the poise of someone who didn't mind being stared at. Tall and slender, Melissa had violet hair twisted into a bun and dramatic eyes lined with dark eyeliner. Her midnight lipstick matched her gothic ensemble, a black leather jacket, tight sliced jeans, and tall boots with silver skulls embedded on the sides. Her long black nails had tiny skulls painted on them as well. Melissa wasn't just a pretty face, she was the first candidate sponsored under the Bloodhunters agency. That alone placed her potential near the top, as the Morningstar family wasn't known for wasting investments. With how much Arthur kept hyping up his big brother, I figured you'd be twice his size, joked the boy, Ryan, extending a friendly handshake. Glad you're not. One of him is more than enough. You're right, one of me is enough. Arthur smirked, flexing his muscles like a proud beast, drawing uneasy glances from nearby candidates. Just because they had made it here didn't mean success was guaranteed. Some were on their second and final attempt. Others had shown up just for the experience. Nightcrawlers were highly selective about their partners. They weren't looking for sympathy, they were looking for survivors. That's why the contract ritual assembly stretched across multiple days. Time was needed to test each candidate thoroughly, inside and out. You're Shia's little cousin, right? Levi asked as he shook Ryan's hand. Arthur had kept Levi updated even while locked in the agency. He'd already told him about befriending a Morningstar cousin, a thrill-seeking relative named Ryan. Though he didn't carry a recommendation letter, he didn't need one. He was family. The letters were meant for the unconnected, the orphans, the exiles, not heirs. Yep, I've heard all about your trip to the harrowing forest. Ryan nodded, clearly impressed. Exploring the wastelands without being daywalkers? Man, your balls must be made of titanium. You know we almost died, right? Yep. Aeon, that must have made you feel so alive. I'm so jealous. Ryan clutched his chest dramatically, as if restraining an outburst of emotion. Levi raised a brow, unimpressed. Why do weirdos always surround me? Ryan looked like a spindly street rat, long-legged, underfed, but his energy was pure fire. A red-haired Morningstar through and through, with a faded undercut, curly top, and sharp golden amber eyes that didn't seem to blink often. His skin was light brown and dusted with a few freckles across the nose. His outfit screamed chaos. Neon-trimmed tech pants, a sleeveless combat vest glowing with red circuitry, fingerless gloves, high-speed boots with shock absorbers, and to top it off, a cropped black hoodie torn at the edges. The look wasn't designed, it was survived in. He radiated the kind of adrenaline that made people flinch without knowing why. Ryan, that's enough. You're scaring our new friend. A soft, tranquil voice cut in. Levi turned instinctively, picking up a humanoid figure in his echolocation, bald, robed, serene. Namaste. I am Huda Omari, but you can call me Monk Jojo. She clasped her palms together and offered a graceful bow. Her scalp gleamed under the sun. It was so perfectly smooth and shiny that it reflected a beam of light across the chamber, temporarily blinding someone on the other side of the hall. It's you, Levi muttered under his breath, recalling the girl Arthur had once told him about, the one he scammed at the gym. Well, not technically scammed. She had offered to pay him 1,000 lumens for a session. You remember her, big bro? Arthur grinned, oblivious to social grace. The one from the gym with the weird exercises. I spotted her earlier and added her to the squad. Levi prepared to scold him for being blunt, but Jojo beat him to it. Her smile vanished. Says the gorilla who broke 5 machines in under 3 months. If the manager weren't terrified of you, you'd have been banned long ago. At least I'm not the gym's laughingstock. Arthur shot back while pulling weird moves. Namaste Haya. Namaste Haya. Jojo noticed everyone staring, some chuckling. But instead of retreating, she doubled down, mocking Arthur with exaggerated muscle poses and dumb, flexing faces. I'll look at my triceps. Huh. My amethyst grow bigger. With her bald head gleaming and her monk robes fluttering, she looked like a deranged bodybuilder in cosplay. It should have been enough to shut Arthur up, but no. He was just as childish. Namaste ho. Namaste punch. My back. So wide you can eat on it. Just like that, the serious, composed image Levi had projected at the entrance shattered completely. The group had earned its label. They were that crowd. Levi's face went blank. It's my fault for leaving him alone. My fault. Beside him, Melissa and Ryan attempted damage control, trying to separate the two clowns before things escalated further. It had only taken a few minutes for them to be branded the weirdos of the gathering. But as Levi stood there, listening to their nonsense, he found himself chuckling quietly, recalling that he was a blind boy desiring to become a daywalker. I'm just as weird as them. Maybe even worse. Huh. Birds of the same feather do flock together. Who would have guessed? What's with the ruckus? A robust, stern voice boomed from above, immediately silencing the hall. All eyes turned upward, locking onto a well-toned man in his mid-50s descending atop the wooden platform. He wore a weathered ceremonial daywalker gray coat and an old sun sigil amulet that dangled at his belt. His arms were crossed over his broad, muscular chest. Though his clothes were worn, he had clearly taken care of his appearance. Golden hair streaked with silver tied back in a low ponytail, and piercing ocean blue eyes that froze every candidate in place. No one even dared to breathe. Shit, this year's instructor is Sir Seraphis. Quick, stand straight, and don't say a word, Ryan hissed under his breath, snapping into rigid posture like a fresh recruit meeting his drill sergeant. Arthur and Jojo dropped their antics instantly and followed suit. Who is he? Levi asked quietly, his focus locked on the wild fluctuations of the man's spiritual aura. Though Levi couldn't see his contracted nightcrawler, just like every other daywalker present, he wasn't surprised. He already knew that nightcrawlers couldn't enter Willow Grove's spiritual bridge. They were only allowed inside in their physical form or the form of their weapon. That's Seraphis Vane, Ryan muttered, meanest and toughest instructor at the center. He treats being a daywalker like it's some divine oath, and he uses the assembly to filter out everyone he deems unworthy. Oh, Levi frowned slightly. He already understood that each assembly changed depending on the instructor and that they were given some freedom to run their own version. Still, he hadn't anticipated this kind of bad luck. I heard that in his last rendition, only 7 contract seekers made it to the final trial, Melissa added, though all 7 were signed. So his success rate was 100%. I see. Levi's expression tightened. That ain't good. He had braced for resistance from instructors due to his blindness, but falling under the supervision of this man felt like the universe playing a cruel joke. Above, Instructor Seraphis arrived on the first floor, stepping off the platform and walking toward the wooden railing. He leaned over it, arms resting lightly, eyes scanning the sea of candidates below. Silence blanketed the chamber. No one met his gaze. All heads remained bowed. I don't care if you were sponsored by the top 4 agencies or came out of lineage families' vaginas, Seraphis said coldly. The moment you stepped inside Willow Grove, your lies are now mine. Am I understood? Yes, sir. The entire hall answered in unison, loud and firm. Seraphis clicked his tongue, clearly hoping someone would slip up so he could set an example. But no one did. He moved on with a sharp nod. I'm Instructor Seraphis Vane, and I've been appointed as this year's Assembly Overseer, thanks to the garbage that's been spewing from these sacred grounds in recent years. His smile was colder than frost. The trials are still the same, but I've added my own sweet twist to weed out the weak faster. Uneasy gulps echoed across the room. Seraphis loved the sight of crumbling confidence. As everyone knows, each year's assembly is split into 5 trials, all held within 7 days or less. He raised a pen-like device and flicked it forward, manifesting 5 massive holographic screens across the upper wall. Each screen bore a glowing title: Trial of Light Affinity, Trial of Physicality, Trial of Spirituality, Trial of Intelligence, Trial of Combat. Then, with a wave, a 6th screen materialized, this one showing a long list of names lined up one beneath the other. This is the Assembly's leaderboard, Seraphis continued. You'll be scored through a point system based on each trial's result. And just so we're clear, scoring 0 in any trial is instant elimination. A wave of anxiety rippled through the candidates. Unlike prior assemblies, failure to complete even a single trial now meant disqualification. Most weren't too concerned about the light affinity trial, unless they were disabled. Unfortunately for one hidden among them, that was precisely the case. I'm screwed, Levi's upper lip twitched. The new rule was a direct death sentence, and he wasn't the only one who noticed. Elsewhere, watching from a live broadcast, Shia, Sergio, and Jamal sat in silent horror. Seraphis Neuralens was streaming the entire thing to national TV. Isn't Levi doomed from the start? Jamal said, rubbing his forehead. Did he have to be this unlucky? Shia growled. She clenched her fists at the injustice. After all Levi had done to prepare, this was how it was going to play out? We can only hope he find a way through it. Sergio murmured. Back inside the hall. Once all trials are finished, your fate will be decided. Seraphis clapped twice. Line up and enter the Willow Grove dimensional mirror. Without hesitation, the more experienced candidates stepped forward. They walked to a massive, circular mirror at the far end of the hall, its edges wrapped in thick, twisted roots like a natural frame. The first candidate waited until the surface began rippling like a disturbed lake, then vanished into its depths. One by one, they followed, until it was Levi's group's turn. It's finally time to kick some ass. Arthur grinned as he shoved Levi forward, unaware of the internal crisis tearing his brother apart. The moment they stepped through, they arrived on a floating slab of land suspended in a dimensionless void. No sky, no sun, no stars. Just one massive, artificial white sun above them, and a never-ending expanse of misty colors swirling beyond the land's edge. Despite its alien appearance, they could all breathe and move without issue. The space had been tuned to mimic Earth's gravity and atmosphere. Above, Instructor Seraphis floated calmly on a platform of his own. Welcome to the boundless expanse, he declared. You'll be spending the next several days here, so you better get used to the scenery. The boundless expanse, Jojo murmured. I heard they host death games here. Yeah, Melissa replied. It's controlled by the nocturnal contract creator. That's why it's neutral ground for high-stakes events. No one knew who the creator really was, but he didn't seem to mind letting others use his domain. But for Levi, none of that mattered right now. I can't score 0 in light affinity, he thought, coming back to himself. That's the only one I can't pass. He knew exactly what the trial tested. The candidate's resistance to blinding divine light, a pure ocular test. And Levi didn't even have eyes. He had accepted this before joining, thinking he could make up for it in other trials. But this new rule, this timing, I just need time. Just one trial, just one to prove my worth. Then his heart sank. Seraphis announced, since talent is primarily the decider of a daywalker's growth, we'll begin with the trial of light affinity, to dig out the gems from the rocks. Then we can work on body, spirit, intelligence, and combat. Levi stood there, utterly speechless. Is something wrong? Arthur whispered near his brother's ear after noticing the change in his demeanor. It's nothing. Levi forced a smile, not wanting to worry his brother and ruin his concentration. He could tell that his brother didn't connect the dots yet. I'm left with the Hail Mary. Levi knitted his eyebrows as he used the surrounding noise to form a sound bridge connecting him to the stage. Then he pressed his index finger into the bridge and focused deeply on mapping it. This was a technique he had refined over the past month, one that allowed him to visualize sound waves down to their tiniest crevices and reconstruct their structure by layering other noises on top. He applied this skill to the Iothorian inscriptions and symbols etched across the stage, forming a perfect three-dimensional auditory image of the surface, one he recreated in front of his mind's eye. Then, he began analyzing the writings, desperately searching for a way to shift the trial from testing light resistance in the eyes to measuring his body's endurance instead. Levi understood the principle. The stage, like most other totems, responded to spoken incantations. A command phrase activated the mechanism, and if he could find and alter it, he might just survive. It was a complex, high-risk endeavor, but not one unfamiliar to Levi. Come on, remember what Mom wrote in her textbooks, he urged silently. The Iothorian language is interconnected so precisely. Just one change in the incantation could alter everything. I just need to find the incantation frame and its supporting utterances. Levi knew this wasn't a quick task. It was like decrypting a layered password, because every incantation was buried beneath millions of meaningless inscriptions. That was the totem's built-in security. 99.9% of the symbols served no purpose beyond camouflage, a forest hiding a single vital tree. This was why most daywalkers whispered their incantations. They didn't want anyone else decoding them. Incantations were a free-for-all system. As long as you knew the language and how to pronounce it, nothing stopped you from using it. As for how he knew that this stage could test both eye and body affinity, it wasn't a secret. Some instructors ran tests for both, but most opted out of the body test, leaving it for the Grand Training Center instead. Not out of laziness, but because the results were almost always the same. Eyes absorbed light through photoreceptor cells built for that purpose. Skin reflected most of it and absorbed only limited wavelengths. If a candidate's eyes scored SS, their body was usually in a or lower, a statistical certainty in over 99.99% of participants. So the second test was seen as pointless. Still, Levi clung to it like a lifeline. He studied the circular wall of strange symbols and pushed his mind into overdrive, desperately trying to extract the correct phrase. Above him, Instructor Seraphis narrowed his eyes and turned his gaze toward the sky. Now, let's greet our ugly dimensional friends, he said, raising a finger toward the void. Everyone instinctively looked up, and many immediately wished they hadn't. Thousands of enormous eyes stared down at them, filling the sky. Each one was different, seductive, monstrous, mystical, chilling. Not a single pair looked the same. They belonged to night crawlers from the shadow dimension, invited to spectate the ritual. Any nightcrawler that signed a nocturnal contract tied to this assembly had the right to watch, and to make a pact with any candidate they deemed worthy. Each contract had a unique serial number. That number turned it into a multilateral link. Anyone who had it could summon the same ritual and participate. In this case, however, Seraphis limited the connection to nightcrawlers alone. If he hadn't, millions of humans could have watched through the sky, their minds directly connected to this space. Thankfully, his Neuralens broadcast was working fine. The void was still tethered to the Willow Grove mirror, which kept Earth's atmosphere and gravity active in this bizarre plane. The government had paid dearly to maintain this fragile bridge between worlds. Fresh meat at last. I've been waiting. Don't disappoint me, cuties. I want a decent partner this time. Look at those scared little faces. Kikiki, this'll be fun. The Nightcrawler's voices echoed across the massive floating platform, rattling some of the candidates to their core. Seraphis had the authority to mute or dismiss them, but he didn't. Their commentary served a purpose, shaking the resolve of the weak. Once you hear your name, step forward and stand on the luminance right, Seraphis commanded, clapping twice. The crusty white marble trembled, then cracked open to form a staircase, rising 10 meters high and leading to a circular stage, the luminance right. It was carved with Ithorian symbols and arcane inscriptions. Seraphis hadn't used his powers to forge it. Authority over this space was his by right, gifted through the nocturnal contract and its mysterious creator. In this dimension, for the next 7 days, he was a deity, Nura Blackthorn. A stunning, lightly tanned girl began her ascent. Her curvy figure moved like a jungle cat. Her plump lips curled into a confident smirk as she looked up at the sky, full of monstrous eyes. She wore a black latex suit that hugged her form. Twin daggers rested in sheaths at her waist. Every step she took, she made sure her hips swayed, drawing the boys' attention. Most of the girls looked less than amused. Ryan, predictably, looked like he was about to drool. Don't even think about it, Melissa warned flatly. She's a siren. Oh, how so? Arthur blinked, clearly confused. She's the daughter of the Midnight Slayer's second-in-command, Levi said calmly, and probably their top prospect in a decade. The Blackthorn lineage started training her at age 3. Wait, the assassination family? Arthur asked, eyebrows rising. Even Arthur, who hadn't studied their competition deeply, had heard about the Blackthorns. They were feared across every holy region, known for assassinating rogue sleepwalkers and fallen daywalkers alike. The Midnight Slayer's agency was built on their blood. If the Morning Stars were battlefield hyenas, the Blackthorns were silent owls, deadliest when the world slept. On stage, Nura reached the top, posed with a hand on her hip, and toyed with her long, braided black hair. Lift your head and stare at the artificial sun. No blinking, Seraphis ordered. Okay, she replied, voice sweet and melodious. She obeyed instantly, staring at the blinding light without flinching. 5 seconds, 10, 30. The symbols on the stage began to glow with each passing milestone, drawing gasps from the crowd and nightcrawlers alike. Finally, she blinked past 35 seconds. Without delay, she pulled out a wooden bottle and applied eye drops. Then she whispered an incantation. One drop, one blink, the burn will sink. Her eyes pulsed once, and the irritation vanished like morning fog. Nura Blackthorn, 35 seconds. Light affinity grade. SF. Score, 150 points, Seraphis announced with a rare hint of satisfaction. You carry your mother's torch well. Thank you. You may step down, as you wish. Instead of walking down, she drew her daggers and leapt. Mid-air, she stabbed one dagger into the wall beside the staircase, using it to slow her descent in a controlled slide. Just before hitting the ground, she kicked off the wall and flipped, landing like a panther. No one said a word. She didn't look like a contract seeker. She looked like a daywalker already. She's a real superhuman, Levi admitted, staring at her graceful gray aura. Ashcrowl wasn't kidding when he warned him about monsters in this assembly. She was the complete package: talent, preparation, resources, and unrelenting will. Levi might have trained for 2 months. She had trained her entire life. And of course, the Nightcrawlers were enchanted. Now, that's a partner. She's mine. Back off. I called dibs. SS Light Affinity and Elite Flexibility? If only she didn't use daggers. Even among the candidates, she was drawing admiration, envy, and desire in equal measure. But the mood quickly soured. After Nuria's dazzling performance, more than 50 candidates stepped onto the stage, and none of them came close to matching her score. Seraphis' expression darkened with each result, as if he had tasted heaven only to be served sewer water afterward. D grade, C grade, D grade, B grade, a grade. While no one had received an F yet, none had even grazed S tier, let alone touched the legendary S grade. Most candidates barely lasted 10 seconds before blinking, as though their eyes were on the verge of combustion. Though our resistance to light could be trained, improved, and even restored with totems, this trial still held heavy weight in the eyes of both the candidates and the Nightcrawlers. Because if someone could last more than 30 seconds without blinking, it meant they had the potential to cultivate for extended hours each day when given the right resources, unlike the others, who would burn out within moments. This trial effectively set the cultivation pace for every candidate, and Nightcrawlers paid close attention to it. A strong result promised faster evolution and a quicker return to their former power. After about an hour, Melissa was called and managed a solid grade. Jojo followed and didn't disappoint either, earning an A as well. Then came Ryan and Arthur, both scoring a respectable B. I really thought it would be different. Arthur sighed, disappointed. His score didn't surprise him. He'd already tested his light affinity at the Bloodhunters Agency. His results had always hovered between C and B, with a max hold time just above 10 seconds. It's all right. Melissa consoled him gently. Light affinity isn't an exact prediction of someone's future. Your pace might be slow at first, but once your eyes adapt to cultivation, you'll take off. I do hope so, Arthur muttered, glancing at his placement on the leaderboard. Rank 88, right in the middle of the pack. Meanwhile, Levi had completely shut out the world. He filtered out every sound that wasn't Instructor Seraphis, rendering himself deaf to the crowd and blind to everything else. It was the deepest focus he could achieve, an optimal state for decoding the hidden incantation behind the luminance rite. And he was close, almost at the breakthrough, until a sharp voice cut through the air and struck him like a hammer. Levi Larson stepped forth. His heart skipped a beat, but his face showed nothing. No panic, no hesitation. He simply turned and walked through the parted crowd toward the staircase. Why do I feel like he's going to score the highest out of our group? Ryan murmured, eyes shining. Me too, Melissa smiled. Arthur's been hyping him up for a whole month. He must be the real deal. Damn you, Arthur. Levi's brow twitched slightly as he realized his stupid brother had been running his mouth again, painting him as some kind of genius. Fortunately, Instructor Seraphis' contracted Nightcrawler was summoned as a weapon, while the spectating Nightcrawlers had their spiritual vision linked to the boundless expense instead of the spiritual bridge of darkness. Thus, no one knew of Levi's disability or tried to stop him from climbing the staircase. After arriving at the stage, Levi knew it was either the moment to create a miracle or beg for one. Levi wasn't the type to leave things to whim. Since there were millions of tiny inscriptions, Levi had to read through thousands of incantations to find the legitimate one. With all the options, he settled on this. Test thine eye, endure the blaze, or go blind. Levi thought, my best chance is this one. Levi removed his sunglasses and lifted his head to gaze at the artificial sun. His thick hair hid his scorched marks perfectly, making it nearly impossible for anyone to see them. Then Levi murmured the new incantation under his breath. Test this flesh. Endure the blaze or wither to ash. He knew it was near impossible to land on the exact required incantation with the short time he had. But he also understood that if an incantation was partially correct and used close enough synonyms, it might still activate partially. While this would negatively affect his true affinity for reading, Levi couldn't care less. Right now, all he wanted was not to score 0. After a second that felt like an eternity, the stage began illuminating slowly. Levi couldn't see the difference, so he focused his ears on everyone's reaction. That's when he caught Instructor Seraphis murmuring, did something happen to the stage's illumination? Why is it dimmer than usual? The instant Levi heard illumination, he lowered his head with a fake grimace and sneakily murmured the original incantation. Then, the stage's lights turned off, and Levi walked away with a disappointed expression. Levi Larson, 3 seconds, light affinity grade F, point scored 1. With a dark expression, Instructor Seraphis announced the readings like he was being punked. Meanwhile, Melissa, Jojo, Nura, and the rest of the contract seekers stared at Levi, dumbfounded. 1 point. F grade? Even though Instructor Seraphis was the one announcing it, they felt something wasn't right. Even children could stare at the sun for more than 3 seconds. Brat, did you sign up to mess with me? Instructor Seraphis chided. Go up and give another try. There's no need. I'm satisfied with my humble results. Levi smiled politely. Is this dude retarded? Here I thought he was a threat after that entrance stunt. Heh, the fabled F grade. I never thought I'd be blessed to witness it in my lifetime. Humble results? Many thoughts coursed through the seekers' minds as Levi returned to his group. Suit yourself. Ulamadmon, step forth. Instructor Seraphis dropped the matter and continued the trial, wasting no time on what he now saw as a lost cause. In his eyes, Levi was done. No Nightcrawler would sign someone who treated the assembly like a joke. If Levi wasn't joking and had truly scored that poorly, then it was even worse. As expected, most Nightcrawlers just laughed in amusement before shifting their attention. However, a few gave Levi an intrigued look, noticing what others had missed, and kept it to themselves. Ashkral was one of them. His unique crossed-out eye narrowed, tracking Levi until he rejoined his brother. Were the rules changed to force him into altering the luminance rights test target? He wondered. He had seen what Levi pulled off, but didn't understand the reason behind it. Instructor Seraphis had announced the new rules outside the dimensional void. If telepathic communication were allowed inside Willow Grove or the Boundless Expanse, Levi would have already informed his partner. But any spiritual connection would have been instantly detected. Meanwhile, this entire area was under Instructor Seraphis' absolute control. He had already banned telepathic exchanges to prevent manipulation from the spectating Nightcrawlers. While he passed this hurdle, he's bound to be exposed in the next trial, Ashkral thought. The same worry filled Levi's mind as he chatted casually with his brother and new friends about his disastrous score. Levi, did you blink by mistake? Ryan asked, confused. No, Levi replied calmly. Did your hair get in the way? Melissa pointed at the shaggy bangs covering part of his glasses. No. Then what the hell happened up there? Jojo took a deep breath to collect herself, then shifted to her monk mode. Namaste. Will you kindly tell us what went wrong? The real question is, what's wrong with you? Levi thought dryly. Arthur and the others were used to her whiplash behavior. Levi, however, was still trying to make sense of it. In the end, he labeled her as bipolar and left it at that. That's just my unfortunate natural light affinity, Levi said calmly. Don't think too much about it. The trial is almost over. You heard him. No more questions. Arthur stepped between his brother and the rest, cutting off their curiosity. He could see they were about to start probing more. Fine. It's his funeral. Melissa and Ryan shrugged, letting the matter drop. They had only just met Levi. If he wanted to throw away his chances, that was on him. Meanwhile, in Shia's mansion, the three troublemakers were glued to the holographic TV, still silent. Eventually, they turned toward each other, wearing the same expression of disbelief. Does he have tiny holes on his scorch marks? Sergio offered with a straight face. Before Shia could shut down his dumb joke, a small hologram flashed beside her eye, a call from her father. She accepted it with a faint grin. Hello. Mind explaining yourself? Lord Idris asked calmly. Though he already knew what she'd done, this was their first direct conversation about it. I had to. It was tied to my perfect evolution. Shia didn't bother lying. Her father hated being bullshitted when he already knew the truth. I see. But why didn't you tell us? Lord Idris said quietly. We would have accepted anything for a perfect evolution. Shia knew he meant it. When it came to perfect evolutions, nothing else mattered. It was a one-time deal. I didn't want to risk it. Bound by contract, Shia couldn't explain further. Her father seemed to understand that revealing the details might void the deal. But we will discuss this later, Lord Idris said. You can expect your hours in the agency to double. Before long, all the candidates had received their grades and scores, except for one. I'm hoping I've saved the best for last, Instructor Seraphis said with a hardened look, because with your shitty scores, I doubt any of you will make it past the physicality trial. Demetrius Bain stepped forth. Demetrius walked through the crowded area with his hands in his pockets and an indifferent expression. Although he was Mantis's little brother, he didn't resemble him much aside from the color of his hair. It was short, dark green, and slightly messy, falling over his forehead and hiding his ears. His skin was fair, with a faint tan like he had been gently kissed by the sun. He wore a simple black t-shirt beneath a hybrid jacket, green on the inside, black on the outside, that looked like a mix between a bomber and a hoodie. On the bottom, he sported slim black sportive pants and sneakers. Strapped to his back was a long-sheathed sword, the leather dyed in a serpentine green pattern that caught the attention of many night crawlers. Weapon choice mattered. Night crawlers had their own battle styles, and they often preferred partners who matched them. For example, a night crawler who specialized in long-range combat would naturally seek a partner with a ranged weapon to maintain synergy. This was also why Shia, Sergio, and Jamal had tried to talk Arthur out of choosing a shield. They knew it would shrink the pool of interested night crawlers. That's why contract seekers were asked to bring their primary weapons to advertise their compatibility. The moment Demetrius stepped onto the stage, it was like a revitalization spell had been cast on Instructor Seraphis and the observing night crawlers. Demetrius fixed his eyes on the artificial sun for 10 seconds, 20, 30, 40. Nuria's pupils thinned when she noticed her record had been broken, and Demetrius still showed no signs of stopping. Just when it looked like he might surpass the 1-minute mark, Demetrius calmly closed his eyes and descended from the stage before Instructor Seraphis could even call out his score. Now that's what I'm talking about. Instructor Seraphis' smile widened with satisfaction as he made the announcement. Demetrius Bain, 55 seconds. Light affinity grades, point score 200. The moment those words rang out, the contract seekers instinctively parted, clearing a path for Demetrius as they stared in a mix of awe and envy. The sea of night crawlers had gone mad with excitement. Some even shouted contract offers right there, and then, a swordsman with SS light affinity? I've seen enough. Sign me up now. Hearing the clamor, many candidates nearly died of envy at the idea of Demetrius securing a contract from the very first trial. Do you wish to sign a contract now? Instructor Seraphis asked. No, I'd like to continue until the end, Demetrius replied calmly. Good. Instructor Seraphis looked up. You heard him. Settle down. The night crawlers quieted, but kept their eyes fixed on the top candidates. Demetrius, Nura, Melissa, Jojo, anyone with an A grade or higher. This concludes the trial of light affinity. Instructor Seraphis clapped twice, and the luminance right staircase crumbled back into the earth, returning the massive platform to its bare state. Then, he projected the updated leaderboard, showing everyone's rankings from top to bottom. Demetrius claimed first place, followed closely by Nura. From the third position downward, the scores were close, but as one scrolled to the bottom of the barrel, a single name stood out like a bruised thumb. Levi Larson, 1 point. He was 20 points behind the candidate just above him. A gap so large it made even the lowest scorers feel slightly redeemed. After all, none of them had scored just one. Levi wasn't deaf. He heard the whispers, the sarcasm, the mocking tones from his competitors. But he wore the same calm smile, their words bouncing harmlessly off his fortified mental walls. The only thing on his mind was, if I want to come first, I've got a long, long climb ahead. There will be no break. You have 10 minutes to warm up for the next trial. The trial of physicality, Instructor Seraphis called out. Welcome to the Gauntlet of Titans. Suddenly, the floating island began to tremble. The cracked earth shook violently as massive mechanical structures burst out from beneath, accompanied by the grinding sounds of ancient gears and pistons. Steel pillars erupted like jagged fangs, forming hazardous sprint lanes. Rotating arms and gears were locked into place in a series of deadly obstacles. At the end of each lane, a sealed door stood, the entrance to a towering structure filled with narrow ledges, collapsing floors, and impossibly tight gaps that tested flexibility and balance. Beyond that, A massive hill rose at a sharp 45-degree incline, stretching more than 3 kilometers. At its peak stood resting chairs, while at its base lay 2 piles of weighted vests. But it didn't end there. Beyond the hill, the terrain twisted like rubber and dipped into a wide, gaping pit, soon filled with torrents of water gushing in from countless spouts hidden in the walls and cliffs. In mere seconds, the pit transformed into a vast artificial lake, its surface shimmering under the artificial sun. At the far side of the lake, a finish line was painted clearly on the ground, glowing faintly. The silence that fell afterward was heavy. Candidates stood motionless, their eyes wide in disbelief at the monstrous obstacle course before them. It was clear now. Instructor Seraphis hadn't come to guide them. He had come to call them. "Welcome to the Gauntlet of the Titans," Instructor Seraphis announced, his proud smirk stretching. "It took me a month to visualize this beauty into reality, so I have high hopes of eliminating at least 40% of you." Gulps and murmurs spread like wildfire across the platform. The trial was designed to be brutal, and no one doubted him when he said he'd built it to thin the herd. And as expected, he didn't let ambiguity linger. "I don't care what you do. Crawl, fly, cry, doesn't matter. If you don't cross the finish line in less than 2 hours, you're done. I don't care if you were first in the last trial or last in the next. 0 means eliminated. Am I understood?" "Yes, sir," the crowd responded in a chorus of shaken voices. "Good. Now, the rules," Instructor Seraphis said, and with a flick of his pen-like device, a large hologram appeared midair, listing the rules one by one. The candidates' eyes scanned the text. The candidate's start timer will be based on the number of points collected. 1 second equals 1 point. Candidates are not allowed to use any form of solar totems. Candidates may use their weapons, but not against others. The gauntlet tests speed, flexibility, strength, and endurance. Each stage will be graded separately. Final points are determined at the finish line. Bonus points will be awarded for completing hidden or extra challenges. Since Levi couldn't see the holograms and his echolocation didn't reflect light in a way that could help, he relied on Astra. Through her soft voice in his ear, she narrated the rules quietly and efficiently. Once she finished, Levi's brows drew together. "I'm dead last, which means I'll have to wait over 200 seconds before I can even move. Ouch." The start timer system was brutal. With each point granting 1 second off the countdown, Demetrius would start immediately. Neuro would follow after 50 seconds, and so on. When the timer reached 1, Levi would be the only one still waiting. "What a harsh rule," Melissa muttered as she eyed Levi with concern. "By the time you're allowed to move, the top 10 will already be halfway through." "It's all right," Levi responded, giving a faint smile. "At least you're taking it graciously," Ryan said, throwing a glance at a few candidates who were already grumbling and protesting the fairness of it all. "Life favors the winners," Levi replied calmly. "If the rules seem unfair, it just means you're not winning hard enough yet." Nearby candidates who overheard him didn't appreciate the comment, taking it as a veiled insult. But Levi didn't flinch under their glares. Nura, however, had a different reaction. She walked past Levi with a lazy, seductive smile and whispered, for someone sitting at the bottom with a single point, "Your confidence is impressive. Let's just hope you're not bluffing." Before Levi could answer, she turned and sauntered toward the starting line, where Demetrius was already stretching. Arthur blinked. What does she mean by that? Levi chuckled as he tracked her retreating aura with his senses. "It means she thinks I'm all bark and no bite." He smiled faintly. "Let her think that. They'll all find out soon enough. Enough chit-chat. Form a line based on your rankings," Instructor Seraphis suddenly ordered. "I guess I'll see you guys at the finish line," Jojo said with a playful salute before heading to the front alongside Melissa. Since Arthur and Ryan had similar rankings, they were next to leave. Arthur had already tried to wait for his brother so they could take on the challenges together, but Levi declined. He told him he preferred to move at his own pace. Hearing this, Arthur gave him a fist bump. "I'll be waiting at the finish line." Levi chuckled and replied, "If you slack off, I might beat you there." Arthur laughed, but didn't brush off the remark. He knew exactly what Levi was capable of and never underestimated him. Not for a second. That said, Arthur had also changed, especially after his training under Lord Idris. He had become a completely different person compared to his former self in the harrowing forest. Soon after, all the candidates lined up in 4 straight rows according to their rankings. And Levi, he stood at the very end, not behind any row, alone. It was like he didn't belong in the competition. Neither Instructor Seraphis nor the contracted night crawlers spared him a second glance. To them, he was a lost cause. Even the audience watching from cafes and homes had already dismissed him. The only ones still holding onto a flicker of hope were Shia, Sergio, and Jamal. But even they knew this challenge wasn't tailored for someone with Levi's condition. No matter how sharp his hearing was or how skilled Astro was in assisting him, competing in a high-speed obstacle trial without sight seemed like a suicide mission. Logically, they weren't wrong, but Levi wasn't a normal human anymore. The trial will begin in 5, 4, 3. Instructor Seraphis roared. 1. Begin. Whoosh. Demetrius shot forward like a bullet, sprinting at full speed through the shifting zigzag lanes. The platforms were unstable, constantly moving, and designed to throw off anyone who couldn't anticipate their changes. As if that wasn't enough, mechanized arms jutted out from the walls, throwing sudden punches meant to knock competitors into the water below. Despite the hazards, Demetrius blazed through the chaos with finesse and power, reaching the other end in no time. Cheers erupted from the viewers, and more than a few contracted night crawlers stared at him with stars in their eyes. 20 seconds to finish the first stage. Speed grade S. Instructor Seraphis noted coolly. Before Nura could be called, Demetrius was already deep in the second stage, a tight structure filled with narrow crawlways, swinging poles, and steep climbs. It was a pure test of flexibility and balance. He even struggled in spots, but he maintained his flow well enough. After 50 seconds had passed, Nura finally got the go-ahead. Though her sprint speed wasn't on Demetrius's level, she breezed through the first stage without a single misstep, dodging every arm like she had rehearsed it in her sleep. But it was in the second stage that she truly shone. She twisted, coiled, and slipped through impossibly tight gaps like a feline without bones. Some gaps even acted as secret shortcuts, ones no one else had even dared try. The crowd held its breath. It was like watching a creature born for this course. She moved so fast, she caught up to Demetrius at the base of the 5-kilometer hill, despite his 50-second head start. "Let's see how far that flexibility gets you now," Demetrius muttered, strapping on a weighted vest and starting his ascent. "Unfortunately for you, I've been training these legs since I was 5. Nura smiled, picked up a vest of her own, and immediately caught up. Her skin-tight latex training suit made it clear her legs weren't just strong. They were built for power and endurance. "Bye-bye," she teased, blowing him a kiss before passing him with ease. Demetrius' expression darkened. He could have pushed harder, but he was smart enough to know there were harder stages ahead. If he wasted energy now, he might regret it later. TCH, damn blackthorn monsters. He watched her pull away and knew that unless something slowed her down, she had already won this round. Meanwhile, Melissa, Jojo, and the other top candidates had begun their runs. Since their point differences were small, many started at the same time, causing chaos on the track. But that was nothing compared to the central batch, dozens of candidates released in clusters. Arthur and Ryan were among them. "Stay behind me. I'll clear the way," Arthur shouted as he barreled forward like a freight train. "Get out of my way." The ground rumbled with his every step. Candidates who turned to see the 6 feet 5 inches behemoth charging toward them instantly panicked. Some even dove into the water on their own. Instructor Seraphis had banned weapons, but said nothing about physical contact. "Huh, good job, Arthur." Ryan cheered from behind. Arthur's brute presence opened a path for those who followed him, like a snowplow clearing a clogged road. Unfortunately, even he couldn't avoid the arm punching from the sidewalls. The narrow lanes became a jammed mess. Candidates started dragging each other into the water, scrambling for space and survival. Arthur didn't care. He powered forward until he cleared the stage. "Now that's what I'm talking about. A juggernaut like him? Fits my style to perfection. Some night crawlers began to take notice. Enhancement-type night crawlers, in particular, were visibly interested, but others were still skeptical. They had seen plenty of meatheads before. The true test was always the second stage. However, Arthur proved them wrong. He may not have matched Nura's elegance, but he bulldozed his way through with astonishing agility, leaping, swinging, and vaulting with surprising grace for someone his size. Imagine a gorilla in motion, powerful, fluid, and relentless. Isn't he the Morningstar's sponsored candidate? I thought so. Wait a minute. Let me double-check the list. No. Arthur Larson isn't registered as a sponsored candidate. What? That can't be. He's been hanging out with their people since the start. The list doesn't lie. Melissa and someone named Levi Larson are the ones sponsored by Morningstars. Levi Larson? That's the guy with the trash light affinity, right? Yeah, the 1-point wonder. Are you saying Madame Naima sponsored the wrong Larson? Madame Naima making a mistake? Keep dreaming. Then what's going on here? I doubt even the Morningstars know. Across every agency watching the trial, similar conversations sparked between leaders and their seconds in command. No one had double-checked the Larson brothers. They simply assumed Arthur was the prodigy on the sponsorship list. But now that the spotlight was on Arthur, the truth had come out. The candidate with the lowest score, the infamous F grade, the blind boy, was the one sponsored by the Morningstars. Not a single agency kept the news to themselves. They swiftly spread it across social media until Levi Larson's name and face were plastered everywhere. A scandal. Morningstar's lineage has sponsored a boy with the worst-known light affinity in the world. Was it a mistake, or was it intentional? Daywalker's Daily Media tweeted, "Rumors say Lord Idris has been personally training a sponsored candidate. Could it be Levi Larson? How could he train a contract seeker with such horrendous talent? No nightcrawler would sign him. What a waste of a recommendation letter. If I had the chance, I'd have performed 10 times better." Weconecto, the most popular social media platform on the planet, was bombarded with posts from media companies, celebrities, daywalkers, and even everyday citizens voicing their complaints. Fortunately, the news remained confined to the Heliodor region's social media sphere. Had it reached beyond, the entire region might have become a laughingstock. As Levi once said, light was worshipped and darkness shunned in this society. In other words, light affinity had become the new beauty privilege. Those attuned to light were treated like angels, saviors, good people, talented, kind, all sorts of praise clung to them like a natural aura. Meanwhile, those with poor light affinity or mental instability were viewed as muggles, misfits, the bottom feeders of society. Whether now or a century ago, human nature hadn't changed. So a boy no one truly knew found himself buried under a nationwide storm of mockery and insults. Unaware of any of it, Levi stood with a serene, gentle smile, using sound to paint his dark world, watching his little brother perform with pride. He's truly improved, I'm glad. While he silently cheered for his brother, no one was cheering for him, except 3 friends watching from afar. As they read through comments on their holographic screens, their expressions soured. He would have scored better if he were blind. Those F***king assholes. What do they even know? Sergio growled, fingers furiously typing replies laced with every insult he could think of. Don't waste your time on those keyboard warriors. She has said coldly. Levi will shut everyone up during the trials of spirituality and intelligence. She believed in him wholeheartedly, convinced those 2 trials would be where Levi truly shone. What she didn't know was that Levi had no intention of lying low in the trial of physicality either. Astra, alert me when it's my turn, Levi murmured, slowly walking toward the starting line. 10 seconds remained on the countdown. He was the final candidate left at the line out of over 100, and, as the scandal unfolded, Instructor Seraphis found himself puzzled. He had known Lord Idris personally. They had gone on joint expeditions in years past. He knew the man's standards, knew he would never allow the Morningstar's name to be tarnished this way, which meant Levi might be hiding something. And so, Instructor Seraphis shifted his focus from the frontrunners to the underdog, placing Levi's face on national broadcast just as the barrage of public ridicule reached its peak. Levi set down his backup gear and rested his metallic staff on his shoulder, silencing the world around him. He tuned out the crowd, the commentary, even his own heartbeat, leaving only the sounds of the gauntlet. The hiss of shifting tiles, the hum of tension gears, the mechanical whine of punching arms, the echo of impact. He listened, mapped, understood. 3, 2, 1, go! The instant Astra's voice resounded in Levi's ear. He took off at the top of his speed on the right lane. His head was always lowered, but his movements were finer than sand. He kept jumping from one sprinting lane to the other for a split second before they shifted, saving him from falling into the water like most candidates in front of him. As for the punching arms, Levi could predict when they would push out from the faint gear noises produced inside. This made him avoid them without losing a fraction of his speed. He even bypassed the candidates holding up routes by jumping between the lanes, making him resemble a character from an old mobile game called Subway Surfer. The hell is that? By the time they reacted to what happened, Levi was already tens of meters away from them. Meanwhile, as the viewers watched Levi's peculiar sprinting form, they didn't know how to react. Everyone felt like he would bust his head into a wall or something, but Levi kept moving akin to a Black Panther. Nothing came close to touching his clothes. In the blink of an eye, Levi made it to the entrance of the second stage, and his grade results appeared on a massive holographic screen. 15 seconds, speed grade set. Instructor Seraphis was stunned. The Nightcrawlers were intrigued, and the viewers were silenced. Levi's results ranked him above both Demetrius and Nura. While his sprinting speed was great on its own due to possessing an amazing physical state, Levi aced the first stage simply because he never slowed down once. Both Demetrius and Nura were forced to slow down due to the arms or the shifting lanes, but Levi sprinted from the start to the finish line like there were no obstacles in front of him. While this performance painted him in a different light for some viewers, many were still not convinced. Possessing an F grade light affinity was like holding on to a massive turd. Regardless of what achievement one did, he would always be looked at as the man holding a turd. If only they knew the whole truth, their reactions might have resembled Shia's, Sergio's, Jamal's, and the ones knowing of his disability. This kind of movement, has he truly refined his other senses to such a supernatural state? Feng Ling wondered as he watched the stream on a small holographic screen. He was sitting on the ledge of a skyscraper while Mao was resting on his shoulder. Obviously, he was smoking a cigarette. He usually never bothered to watch the yearly assembly, but he didn't want to miss this one after finding out Levi had signed up. Maybe, or he has already signed a contract, Mao said. It can't be. His spiritual aura would have gotten picked up immediately by Willow Grove. Feng Ling shook his head. Plus, he isn't desirable by most Nightcrawlers, and I doubt he will sign a sleepwalker contract. Why? If he wanted to, he would have done it years ago instead of taking in their daily abuse. Feng Ling replied calmly as he gazed at Levi entering the second stage. Well, we did see many special kids born with unnatural talents unrelated to light. Mao smiled. I guess this desolate region was blessed with one. Maybe, Feng Ling said calmly. But everything still depends on the Nightcrawlers. I hope his talents catch someone's eye. Back to the trial. Levi was seen bolting across the second stage, not slowing down for even a moment. Unlike his brother, he had been training in calisthenics since he was a child, which was the key to passing the second stage. While it tested flexibility and agility, many challenges required amazing upper body and grip strength, such as cliffhanger, a thin ledge that forced competitors to traverse it using their fingertips. Many candidates ignored or gave up on this challenge, deciding to skip it altogether. Since points were scored based on the number of challenges completed, they weren't getting out of it scot-free. Every decision they made in the entire gauntlet of Titans was going to affect their final score. It was so significant that candidates might get ranked much lower than another candidate who finished the track late, but managed to complete more challenges. In simpler terms, this was not a race, and Instructor Seraphis made sure to give the candidates a whole 2 hours to complete as many challenges as possible. After finishing with the cliffhanger, Levi landed on top of a blue cushion. Without lifting his head, he scanned the next challenge and pulled out his staff from its holster. It's a Salomon ladder connected to a zip line, leading to the end of the second stage. My staff will do the trick. Levi sprinted and then jumped while holding his staff above his head. Cling! The staff latched into the middle rung, allowing Levi to skip more than 4 rungs at the bottom. Then he started to jump the staff up a series of rungs, using only the strength of his arms. Cling! 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 However, as Levi was climbing upward rapidly, his auditory vision showed him the aura of multiple candidates struggling above his head. Jump into the water. His chilling voice slithered into the ears of a hairy man in his mid-20s. As he looked down and saw that it was just Levi, he couldn't help but sneer cockily. Brat, this is my last chance to get signed. I ain't jumping for no one, especially not for you. Fine, suit yourself. Levi embraced the staff with his elbow, freeing his other hand. Without an ounce of hesitation, he caught the leg of the man and yanked his ass off the rung. Hey! The hairy man screamed with a horrified look as he fell into the water, splashing it everywhere. A second later, he popped out and cursed out Levi with 2 middle fingers. Levi continued on his climb, feeling absolutely no remorse for ruining the chances of other candidates. In his eyes, this was a competition, and he was going to do anything within the rules to achieve victory. Cling! Cling! F***CK. He is climbing so damn fast. Go up quickly. The candidates felt their ass cheeks tightening with each metallic noise they heard underneath them, knowing that when Levi got close enough, their fate would be similar to the hairy man's. Too bad, there was nothing to save them as Levi caught the next one in no time. Similarly, he tried to grab the candidate's leg, but this time he was prepared. Get the F***CK off me. He started kicking Levi's arm, try his best to break his fingers or something to get him off. Alas, Levi's ears had become a certified weapon. The moment he tried to go for a second kick, the whooshing noise of the wind sold its trajectory on a silver plate. All Levi needed to do was avoid the kick and grab it. The moment the candidate felt Levi's cold hand tighten around his chin, he couldn't help but gulp a mouthful in fear. Please, Splash. Another one was forced into an early swim. Mercy, Kaya, please. I am just 1 rung away. Just give me a few seconds. Just like a dog on a mission, Levi was relentless in his climb, stopping for no one and hearing nothing, whether it was a girl or a boy begging for an opportunity to complete the challenge. While it might seem merciless, Levi knew that whatever he was doing to them, it would be done to him in a heartbeat. Cling. After completing the last rung, Levi stood at the highest point in the entire structure. He found a gray, boyish figure already standing there next to the zip line. He seemed to be holding onto a pile of objects. Just as Levi was about to tune out the details of the objects, the blue-haired boy threw everything in the water and held a single piece. This time, Levi saw what it was: a handlebar. Good luck getting down. The blue-haired boy smirked coldly and used the sole remaining handlebar to traverse the zip line. The hairy man and all the harmed candidates in the water couldn't help but cheer with wicked laughs after realizing what happened. That's called karma. UB*TCH. Haha. Watch him struggle to get down. You get what you deserve, asshole. Levi heard everyone's muffled-out curses and didn't let them affect him one bit. He had already thought of a way to finish the zipline challenge. He tapped the zipline twice with his staff to calculate its distance through sound. Then, he nodded and tightened his grip on the staff, placing its center on top of the zipline, which appeared as a long vibrational string, leading to infinite darkness. Wait, what is he doing? Before the candidates, nightcrawlers, and viewers could react, Levi had already taken a leap of faith. Sparkles flew everywhere as the metallic staff kept grinding against the steel zipline. Yet, Levi ate them up while his circular sunglasses protected his non-existent eyes, creating a fascinating scene that left many viewers staring with widened eyes. Meanwhile, when the blue-haired boy landed on the cushion at the end line, his ears picked up on the grinding noise behind him. What the F***CK? As he turned around and saw Levi coming in hot, his face drained of color as he swiftly got away from Levi's way. The handlebars had a brake mechanism, but Levi had no such thing. Before Instructor Seraphis could wonder how he was going to slow himself to land on the cushion, he was left stunned at the sight of Levi letting go of one side of the staff way before he was under the cushion. But due to his insane momentum, Levi timed it perfectly, landing akin to a cannonball straight on the cushion. A second later, Levi's head popped out of the cushion, and he sprinted past the shell-shocked, blue-haired boy, heading directly to the weighted vests. His score appeared again on the hologram, catching everyone by surprise. 2 minutes, all challenges completed, SS grade. What the hell am I witnessing? Jamal murmured with a dazed tone, feeling like he was spectating a different Levi. I knew based on his training he was going to do good, but I didn't know he would be this good. Shia was also left astonished. If it wasn't for the second stage being more crowded, he would have definitely scored much better. Jamal nodded. It's Astra AI. She must be giving him full details of his environment, and by utilizing his enhanced senses, he is moving as smoothly as butter. Bleeder commented from inside Shia's jacket. Most likely. Everyone nodded in agreement, as they knew that no other explanation could describe Levi's insane movements. None of them bothered to consider Levi getting signed, as they also knew that Willow Grove would have snitched on him instantly. Uninvited daywalkers or sleepwalkers could not enter Willow Grove without alarming it. It was considered impossible, as its spiritual presence could detect even Tier 8 nightcrawlers attempting to suppress their auras. If even those monsters couldn't pull it off, how could anyone expect a child to? Meanwhile, inside the Blood Hunters Agency's headquarters, Lord Idris and Madame Naima were also taken aback by Levi's performance. Marvelous, not a single movement wasted. Lord Idris praised. But how? Didn't you tell me he is blind? How can a blind boy move in such a manner? Madame Naima was astonished. It defies all logic. My assumption is Astra AI and superhuman senses, Lord Idris replied. I've met him. His spiritual prowess alone was on a different plane of talent. Wait, don't tell me he's an Ano. We're about to find out. Lord Idris cut her off, not wanting to indulge in speculation when the truth was unfolding before their eyes. After Levi arrived at the area with the weighted vests, he noticed that the hill was packed with candidates, most carrying only a single vest. Since the participants were mixed, the vests were divided into 3 categories. Light for 0.5 to 9 kilograms, moderate 9 to 18 kilograms, and heavy 18 to 36 kilograms. Everyone was free to choose whichever they wanted. The points are scored based on one's body weight in correlation with the lifted weight. That's fair to everyone, but not to Arthi, Levi thought, shifting his focus to find his little brother with echolocation. Sure enough, he spotted Arthur struggling. He had a heavy vest strapped to his back while giving a piggyback to another 4 moderate ones. He didn't look comfortable in the slightest. While this weight was already insane in the eyes of most viewers and candidates nearby, Levi knew his brother could lift much more if his form was better suited. This trial is his best shot at scoring the highest number of points. Without hesitation, Levi loaded up a heavy vest on his torso, then placed 2 medium vests and 2 light ones on the ground. What's he doing? Don't tell me he's about to carry all of that up a 5-kilometer slope. How? Wait, is he loading the weight onto his staff? That's insane. Under the stunned gazes of viewers across the region, Levi lifted his loaded staff and rested it across the back of his neck. With a slightly hunched posture, he started up the slope, resembling an old village granny carrying half her body weight on a mountain trail. Breathe in, breathe out. Levi kept his breathing controlled, sinking each breath with every step. His thighs and calves tensed with effort, tightening to their limits. Still, he moved faster than many candidates who had to stop to catch their breath. Arthur was one of them, but not because of exhaustion. He had paused to fix the positioning of the vests. God damn it. Can this be any more uncomfortable? Arthur grumbled, resisting the urge to toss a few vests aside and sprint to the top. He knew that would cripple his point tally. As he crouched to adjust the vests, his eyes caught a metallic gleam below. When he squinted to get a better look, his eyes lit up. Big bro. He had expected Levi to catch up eventually, but not this fast. Not when he had more than a minute's head start. Levi, he shouted, waving wildly, uncaring of the looks he received. Arthur, meet me halfway. Hearing Levi's voice, Arthur didn't hesitate. He dropped the vests and charged downhill, assuming his brother needed help. Thankfully, only 500 meters separated them. Once they met, Arthur took the metallic staff off Levi's shoulders without question. I brought this extra weight for you. Levi wiped the sweat from his forehead. Fill the staff with the remaining vests. That way, you can carry everything at once. Huh, just what I needed. Arthur grinned. It's not a deadlift bar, but it'll do. Let's move. Levi gave a slight nod, and together they jogged back to retrieve the vests. Jackpot! Quick! Grab them before the hunk returns. Elsewhere, two candidates attempted to steal Arthur's vests. One was a burly man in his 20s with a thick beard. The other, a fair-skinned blonde teenager. They knew the scoring system awarded points based on the carried weight at the finish line, not how far it was carried. Many were already abusing this loophole, ambushing others near the end of the slope to steal their vests and inflate their scores. Instructor Seraphis observed it all and said nothing. In his eyes, the vests weren't just weights, they were currency. And if you couldn't protect your money, that was your problem. Big bro, they're stealing my vests. Arthur's voice was laced with fury. Levi honed in on the thieves using echolocation and said coldly, no one steals from the Larsons. He shifted from a jog to an all-out sprint, still weighed down, but accelerating with brutal intent. Arthur matched his brother's energy and charged forward without hesitation, as if he weren't carrying over 100 kilograms on his back. In moments, they closed the distance. The two thieves were visibly struggling with just 2 vests each. Hearing Arthur's thundering steps, they looked back impaled. Crap, the hunk's coming. Run, bro, run. I can barely walk. Drop the vests. Realizing escape was hopeless, they flung the vests away and tried to flee. But it was too late. Levi emerged from behind Arthur like a predator, silent, swift, deadly. He caught the bearded man by the back of his shirt and slammed him to the ground with a thud. Noah, the blond boy cried out. He turned to see his brother unconscious, with Levi removing the vest from his chest. You bastards, the boy snarled. We already dropped the vests. Did you really have to eliminate my brother? This was his last chance to get contracted. Vicious, Levi echoed, tilting his head. He stepped closer, calm and cold. The boy instantly dropped into a fighting stance. If I wanted to be vicious, I would have eliminated both of you, Levi said flatly. He extended his hand. If you care about your brother's chances, hand me your vest. The boy hesitated, then glanced at his brother's motionless body and understood. Without a word, he tossed the vest at Levi's feet and rushed back to wake Noah. Levi took the vest and helped Arthur load on the staff. Soon, it vanished under the pile of weight. When Instructor Seraphis and the night crawlers counted the vests on Arthur's shoulders, they realized he was carrying over 200 kilograms. What a jogrant. Is this brat still a teen? His strength is abnormal for someone his age. I can't believe I found a jackpot in such a deserted region. The night crawlers checked Arthur's participation details and couldn't help but feel astonished at his ludicrous strength, age-wise. Now that's the good stuff. Arthur beamed as he hoisted the load like it was a barbell, then started up the slope, the grin never leaving his face. For him, this wasn't a trial, it was a workout. I'm taking your shield. Bring my staff to the finish line in one piece. Levi tapped his brother on the chest, grabbed the shield, and took off at the top of the hill. Watching it all unfold, the blonde thief realized Levi had done everything, risking his own points for his brother. His resentment slowly evaporated, replaced by admiration. With renewed determination, he lifted his brother onto his back and began his climb, one step at a time. Meanwhile, Levi reached the slope's peak, carrying only one heavy vest. Though exhausted, it would have been far worse had he carried everything himself. He wasn't a musclehead like Arthur. He had his own limits. As for the other candidates, none dared antagonize him now. Not after what they witnessed. Levi knew they wouldn't mess with Arthur either. Bullies only targeted the weak, and those fools understood they wouldn't walk away unscathed if they touched his brother. Nura and Demetrius already crossed the silent lake and made it to the finish line. I may need to go all in if I want to beat them. Standing at the trial's highest point, Levi sent out a series of echolocation pulses, scanning the landscape. Below was a steep hill, followed by a shimmering, quiet lake. Most of the top 10 were already swimming across, racing toward the finish. Others sat at the edge, panting in exhaustion, completely spent. They had burned too much energy and now hesitated to swim the last 100 meters. With 2 hours total to complete the trial, no one dared enter until they'd recovered. Levi noticed that those descending the steep hill were doing so slowly, careful not to fall. The slope wasn't just for show, it tested balance and control. But Levi knew that going slow would cost him. By the time he reached the lake, the top spots would be gone. Already spent 3 minutes thinking through each stage of this trial. He didn't grab Arthur's shield just for the giggles. He needed it. This could go badly, but screw it. Levi adjusted his grip on the circular shield. It wasn't designed for this. It wasn't made for what he had in mind. But in that moment, with a steep slope ahead and time slipping through his fingers, it was his only shot at stealing back the lead. He crouched near the edge, tightening his core, calculating the angle through echolocation pings bouncing off the terrain. The slope was long, steep, crude. Grass and dirt patches made it rough, but not rough enough to slow him down if he committed to it. Behind him, candidates were still pushing their way up with vests weighing down their backs. Below, others took careful, measured steps, praying not to trip. Further down, the lake shimmered in the sun, a calm surface masking the chaos of bodies cutting through it in a frantic race to the finish. Levi dropped the shield flat on the ground, placed his staff tightly across his back, and lay down on his stomach, arms gripping the edges, legs tucked in like a missile preparing for descent. You only live once, he muttered under his breath, embracing the YOLO spirit. Then he shoved off. Whoosh! The wind screamed past his ears as the shield picked up speed. Vibrations rattled through the metal, singing across his bones, but Levi's grip stayed firm. Grass tore beneath him, dirt exploded to his sides, and the world narrowed into one deafening tunnel of wind and friction. What the hell is that? Is he riding a shield? Someone stop him before he kills himself. The audience couldn't believe it. Neither could the candidates, who watched Levi blaze past them like a bullet fired from a cannon. 1 second he was a speck above, the next he was gone, screaming down the hill with zero hesitation. Some of them flinched as he zipped by. *T. He nearly clipped my leg. Is he insane? He's going too fast. Levi didn't hear any of it. His world was sound and momentum. He used the howling wind and vibrations under the shield to keep track of terrain changes. Every bump, shift, and tilt painted in his mind like a 3D map. He leaned left, dodging a jagged rock. He pulled slightly right, sliding past a crouched girl, clutching her knee. He even bypassed Ryan, leaving him to stare at his back speechlessly. He always believed himself to be a daredevil who had no problem with any sort of stunt. But as he gazed at Levi nearing the lake, he realized that a new daredevil was in town. Then, the slope ended. The lake arrived. Instead of slowing, Levi let go of all caution. He launched off the slope's end, shield and body airborne for a split second, and slammed into the lake's surface with a massive splash. But the shield didn't stop. Levi made sure to keep his head lowered to avoid disrupting the shield's aerodynamics. As long as he remained one with it, and his body straight as an arrow, his calculations promised the shield wouldn't sink. As expected, it skimmed across the water like a flat stone, skipping once, twice, then gliding smoothly as if the lake had frozen just for him. The force of his entry sent waves rippling in every direction, soaking nearby swimmers, who looked up in awe and panic. Levi, what the F asterisk C, namaste. Wow, he's riding the water? You can do that. Even Jojo and Melissa, who were already halfway across, paused mid-stroke to look over their shoulders at him. Levi kept his body tight, every inch of him clinging to the shield as it sliced through the lake. The friction was real, the drag intense, but his momentum didn't let up. He adjusted his weight once more, slightly forward, just enough. The shield hit the final patch of shallow water and launched him one last time, straight toward the finish line. Thump! Levi rolled off the shield and landed in a crouch position across the edge of the finish line. He was gasping, drenched, but with a faint, almost smug smile etched on his face. The holographic board flickered above him a second later. Levi Larson, performance recap. First stage, time, 15 seconds grade, assess. Second stage, time, 2 minutes grade, assess. Third stage, time, 17 minutes grade, S. Fourth stage, time, 20 seconds grade, SSS. Final score, SS plus final rank. First place, silence. The crowd didn't cheer, not yet. They were too stunned, too confused, too damn speechless at what they just witnessed. A second later, cheers erupted. He actually did it. Jamal nearly dropped his holographic screen. Dear Lord, I knew he was good, but not this good. Sergio blinked twice before letting out a wide, wicked grin. Someone go collect every single hater's address. I got time. Shia's arms were crossed, but a quiet smile touched her lips. The kind that didn't need celebration, just satisfaction. Told you, he's not just good. He's Levi. Even Bleeder popped in his weapon form out of Shia's jacket and clicked excitedly. Did you see how he used the shield to slide on water? I always knew he had it in him. In the audience, chaos erupted. Cheers, screams, shock gasps. A wave of noise crashed through most gatherings in the streets, cafes, and restaurants. We just witnessed history. He beat Nura and Demetrius with close to 3 minutes head start. People weren't just stunned, they were unmoored. The very foundation of what they believe about talent, about power, about who deserved to win, was just flipped upside down by a boy they had mocked online hours ago. And then, the Nightcrawlers reacted. Not one of them spoke right away. Some narrowed their eyes. Some simply stared at Levi's, rewinding the footage in their minds. The monsters of the Heliodor region, those who prided themselves on sensing potential from the first heartbeat, had missed something big. One of them chuckled lowly. That shield slide, who taught him that? Another muttered. It wasn't a trick. He read the terrain perfectly and committed with everything. You have seen how he moved, evaded bumps, and such. It's like he has a radar installed in him. That was real battle instinct. A dark-furred nightcrawler with glowing green eyes narrowed her gaze. His body is decent. His light affinity is questionable. But his application, his control, it's terrifying. Meanwhile, Instructor Seraphis stared at the result, then glanced at the slope, the lake, then Levi, who was casually squeezing water out of his jacket while walking in the direction of Demetrius and Nura. Someone actually did it. What kind of candidate have you sent me? Seraphis muttered, Lord Idris' face surfacing in his mind. After Levi arrived next to his rivals, he sat down and asked with his usual unprovocative smile, Is there a towel or something? Nura stared at him speechlessly for a moment before uttering, You're actually crazy. Crazy? He is a cheater. That's what he is, Demetrius scoffed. He wasn't impressed in the slightest with how Levi passed the fourth stage. Maybe he was jealous of his score. Maybe he was embarrassed at being bumped to third place after Levi snatched rank 1 from Nura. Or maybe he genuinely believed there was no decent way to pass a stage where endurance and stamina were supposed to be tested. Whatever it was, Levi didn't even bother to respond. In his mind, it wasn't up to him to dispute an accusation. Yet, to his surprise, Nura was the one backing him. Aren't you being a bit of a sore loser? Nura narrowed her eyes in displeasure. Instructor Seraphis told us we could use whatever means necessary to reach the finish line, as long as we respected the rules. Yes, and the rules were put in place to ensure our stats get measured accurately, Demetrius retorted. In what universe does a triple SSS count when he slid across the lake instead of swimming it like we did? How? Is that his problem? Nura frowned. I'd like to believe that discovering loopholes within rules should be rewarded, not punished. It's a sign of intelligence, not cheating. If you think otherwise, you're just being a hater. I know for a fact you would have done the same if the idea had come to you. Me? I don't need to abuse the rules to come first. Demetrius sneered, refusing to back down. If only the viewers and Nightcrawlers thought the same way, he wouldn't be getting grilled on the networks and across the shadow dimension. That's one of the coolest trial finishes I've witnessed in a long, long time. If what he did counts as cheating, then you might as well cancel the assembly. No sane Nightcrawler will see wrong in what the boy did. One of the Nightcrawlers commented out loud, his voice is rough as an unpolished diamond. Is that? Levi immediately lifted his head, recognizing the voice as belonging to the crystallized black rhino he had met during a shower. He couldn't help but smile at the support, sensing that the rhino said it to repay him for showing him the way. The Nightcrawlers and viewers backed up the rhino's claim with overwhelming support, even though they knew Levi's trash light affinity would make any result he pulled obsolete in the end. Instructor Seraphis, it's your call. Demetrius reached out to the silent overseer above them, realizing no one was on his side in this matter. He knew deep down that he was right. He believed that if Levi's results were accepted, the stat accuracy would become meaningless, as an SSS would equate to an F. Unfortunately for him, Instructor Seraphis knew what he was doing when he designed the Gauntlet of Titans. He silenced the Nightcrawler's ruckus with a thought and said calmly, Levi Larson's final score is legitimate. The moment Demetrius and his older brother Mantis heard this, their expressions turned dark. While Mantis cursed at the TV screen from beside his agency's companions, Demetrius kept his emotions in check and asked for clarification. Did any of you ever wonder why Larson succeeded in traversing the lake in one slide? Why was it even possible, considering that many hurdles should have made it impossible? Why did I leave resting chairs at the top of the slope in the middle of a competition? Instructor Seraphis asked. With each question fired, Demetrius, Nura, and even the viewers felt their pupils narrow as the realization struck. Instructor Seraphis wanted them to do exactly what Levi did. Even Levi was somewhat taken aback. He hadn't expected the instructor to incorporate the slide into the trial's design. But when he thought about it more closely, everything was too perfect to be a coincidence. The shallowness of the water, the steepness of the hill, the smooth grass field, the launching area between the hill and the lake. Everything had been constructed precisely to make the slide viable, but only for those with the guts and skills to attempt it. While Levi had done his part to ensure success, he now realized none of it would have been possible if the conditions hadn't aligned so seamlessly. Instructor Seraphis, he's the real deal, Levi thought, gazing at the instructor's contained golden spiritual aura with admiration. You thought I was testing your endurance or balance with the fourth stage, but in reality, it was to test your adaptability, Instructor Seraphis continued. Why do you think you scored only an A grade? It can't be, Demetrius mumbled in disbelief. The viewers were equally stunned, but some daywalkers familiar with Seraphis' teaching methods weren't surprised. His tests always had curveballs. They just hadn't expected one like this. One more note. Stats accuracy means nothing to me. Besides light affinity, I couldn't care less about your scores. I have my own eyes to judge, and so do the Nightcrawlers, Instructor Seraphis added indifferently. Or have you forgotten your original reason for entering this assembly? No. Then why are you focused on stats instead of delivering your best performance, regardless of what the rules say? As he spoke, Demetrius lifted his gaze toward the thousands of eyes looming in the sky, watching his every move like hawks. Possessing a great light affinity is a good start, but it's not what gets you far in life. It will get you signed, yes, but not by Tier 4 and higher Nightcrawlers. Those monsters only commit to a partner when they know he's not a one-gift wonder. Instructor Seraphis concluded, then looked directly at Demetrius. So tell me, are you a one-gift wonder? A one-gift wonder referred to children born with amazing light affinity, but no other redeeming qualities. While that might land them a contract, their path as a daywalker could be even harder than someone with lesser talent. After all, light affinity was mainly about our resistance to light, not combat effectiveness. No, sir. Demetrius shook his head firmly. Then keep your mouth shut next time and work harder in the upcoming trials. That was Seraphis' final word before he drifted away to observe the rest of the candidates. He only said this much because the others couldn't hear. He would never compromise the competition's integrity. After the instructor departed, Demetrius approached Levi and said quietly, "My apologies. It seems I wronged you." "Don't sweat it. It happens," Levi replied with a kind smile. Demetrius gave a respectful nod and walked away to sit elsewhere. "You think he apologized sincerely?" Nura asked, crossing one leg over the other. "Not in a million years." Levi shook his head, listening to Demetrius' heartbeat. He could feel the boiling rage inside, tightly controlled, but very much alive. This whole episode had humiliated him. He hadn't just been proven wrong. He'd been scolded in front of nightcrawlers and his entire home region. "I think so, too." Nura giggled. "You were definitely in his crosshairs." "What are you giggling for?" Levi chuckled. "He might be coming for me, but I'm coming for you." "Oh, is that so?" Nura smiled seductively, but Levi didn't spare her glance. "I'm afraid this trial was your last chance to widen your lead," Levi said calmly. "From here on out, all you'll see is my shadow." He said it loud enough for Demetrius to hear, and didn't care. He was that confident in the trials to come, the ones where his true talents would shine. "It seems you're underestimating me," Nura teased. "How about a fun little wager to spice things up?" What do you have in mind?" Levi acted surprised, though he was grinning inwardly. This was the reaction he wanted, the reason he even approached her. "Since you're so sure you'll catch up and steal my leaderboard rank, how about we bet some Solar Aegis coins?" "How much?" "Name your price." "I have deep pockets," Nira replied. Levi didn't doubt her. The Blackthorn family was known as one of the wealthiest in the Northern Africa district, even wealthier than the Morningstars. Their assassination services were paid almost exclusively in Solar Aegis coins, the most valuable currency in the world. "How about the prize money, plus 2,000 Solar Aegis coins?" Levi suggested. He only had 1,000 in hand. Arthur held the other half. But Levi didn't hesitate to bet everything to swindle even more from Nura. Nura didn't flinch. "Sounds interesting, let's do it." She extended her thin, smooth hand, and Levi shook it without even turning his head. While his peculiar manner intrigued her, she never imagined he was blind. Neither did the instructor, nor the nightcrawlers, nor the viewers. After what he'd done in the Gauntlet of Titans, no one in their right mind believed Levi was visually impaired. And Levi knew it. He also knew that going high profile carried the risk of someone discovering the truth during the week-long assembly. But he didn't care. Since Ashcrow promised that no one would uncover their contract and that he would handle the fake signing procedures, Levi saw no reason to stay low profile. He understood that to be signed by Ashcrow without raising suspicions, he had to overperform. Signing a blind candidate was considered suicidal in most eyes. Levi had to convince the world that his other qualities were so overwhelming that even blindness couldn't hold him back. In his mind, it was far easier to explain future miracles under the spotlight than in the shadows. Suddenly, Demetrius returned and requested calmly, "Is it possible to be added to the wager?" "Well, of course," Levi said with a wide, kind smile. "The more, the merrier." "Can you afford it, though?" Nura sized him up and down, making Demetrius' expression turn cold for a moment. "Why haven't you asked him that?" "He set the price, and I don't think he would have done so without having the necessary funds." Nura smiled at Levi, who nodded in agreement. "I can afford it." Demetrius narrowed his eyes at Levi. "I can even add another wager if you're interested." "Oh, why are you addressing him alone?" Nura pouted. "I want to join too." "This isn't a wager for either of us, but just for people like him," Demetrius smirked. "I bet that you won't get signed by any of those nightcrawlers at the end, even if your ranking is in the top 10. Nura covered her mouth with a hand in intrigue. She maintained her silence and stared at Levi, awaiting his response to such a kick under the belt. State your price. Levi smiled. The discount reward, Demetrius said. If I win, you'll hand over the training center discount, in case you rank in the top 5. If not, you'll pay me 1,000 solar Aegis coins. I assume the same applies to you? Levi asked. Yes. Seems fair. Levi smiled. We have placed these wagers under the watchful eyes of nightcrawlers and viewers. Demetrius narrowed his eyes at Levi. I would like to assume that you won't be foolish enough to renege on it later once you lose. If it were up to him, he would have used nocturnal contracts to ensure that no one dared go back on their word. But since nocturnal contracts could only be summoned by those with seeds, he was stuck with using the viewers to pressure Levi. Unbeknownst to him, Levi was the one fearing that Demetrius might go back on his word. How about this? We'll swear it on our sponsored agency's names, Levi suggested. I don't know how you swindled your way into the Blood Hunters agency, but fine by me. I'll take you on that. Demetrius gave a slight head nod in agreement and walked away. He understood that swearing a bet on their agency's names implicated them in case a problem arose with the payment. Since they did it on national TV, it meant their agencies would do everything to protect their reputation, even if it meant paying the loser's debt. When Shia saw this, her eyelids couldn't help but twitch in vexation. He hasn't even taken a step inside the agency, and he's already using our name as backup. This prick will get me kicked off the family once and for all. An hour later, the trial of physicality was concluded, and many of the surviving candidates were either sitting on the grass or vomiting against a tree. At least they made it out, unlike many others who had been eliminated either due to injuries or exhaustion. They were already sent outside of Willow Grove's dimensional mirror. It's time to update the leaderboard rankings, Instructor Seraphis announced. Everyone lifted their heads and gazed at the massive holographic screen with their names on it. The names of the eliminated candidates began turning dark while the rest shuffled among each other. On the far corner, points were added at varying speeds. A few seconds later, the new leaderboard was finalized, stealing everyone's breath away. 1. Nura Blackthorn, 400 points. 2. Demetrius Bain, 398 points. 3. Arthur Larson, 392 points. 4. Levi Larson, 381 points. 5. Huda Omari, Jojo, 290 points. 6. Melissa Harper, 240 points. 7. Omar Mansour, 190 points. 8. Celine Ostris, 150 points. 9. Kira Joan, 149 points. 17. Ryan Morningstar, 122 points. 2 names were noticeably out of place amongst the top 10, Arthur and Levi. One was in the middle of the rankings before and moved straight to 3rd rank, while the other was at the very bottom of the list and now became the 4th highest ranked. When Demetrius saw how many points Levi earned in one trial, he couldn't help but grit his teeth behind sealed lips. Since Levi had a measly 1 point prior, it was easy to calculate that he had earned 380 points from the trial of physicality. Although he wasn't ranked first in the overall standings, he had earned the highest possible amount of points. The surprising part, Arthur was the 2nd. I came 3rd, and you came 4th. Arthur grinned as he fist-pumped his brother. Good shit, I couldn't have done it without you. It was all you. Levi smiled while sheathing his black staff in its holder. Although he had assisted his brother on the 3rd stage by bringing more weight and even handing over his staff, Levi had no interest in taking credit. After all, if they hadn't traded weapons, he would have wasted more time thinking of ways to slide off the hill, which could have affected his final results. The next 2 trials will be held tomorrow morning. Feel free to relax and tend to your wounds in your rooms, Instructor Seraphis announced while clapping his hands. Following the noise, the gauntlet of the Titans began collapsing, stage by stage, as if buried explosives were set off beneath it. A cloud of dirt covered the platform, forcing some candidates to shield their faces. It lasted only a few seconds before it dissipated into the void. But instead of revealing a desolate space, a massive standardized apartment complex sprouted from the ground. The apartment complex resembled a sand prison, yellow and dreadful. It had windows and doors, but it was not as welcoming as the buildings they were used to staying in. Stop giving me those looks. You should feel blessed I haven't lodged you in tents, Instructor Seraphis said coldly, noticing the displeasure on some faces. Immediately after, everyone forced on satisfied smiles, fearing he might go through with it. Your room number is the same as your rank. You'll find everything you need in your rooms. Don't cause any trouble. I have you all under my radar. With that last warning, Instructor Seraphis exited the boundless expanse, leaving the candidates with the staff members. Of course, he kicked out the spectating nightcrawlers, returning the void to its peaceful state. He couldn't risk letting them linger around the candidates. He knew they wouldn't hesitate to manipulate or seduce them. As for the live stream, he disconnected at the moment he left. Unlike other instructors, he had no interest in keeping a 24/7 feed of the candidates. In his eyes, this wasn't a reality TV show. Although he disconnected the stream, he restored network access so candidates could pass the time. Immediately, everyone logged into WeConnect to check the latest news and reactions about their performances. Alas, many were disappointed when they saw that only Nura, Demetrius, Levi, and Arthur were going viral. Is it weird if I admire Nura's figure, even though she's still technically a minor? Seek help. From 1 point to 381. Insanity. Even though he had a 3-minute delay and was more than 150 points away, he still made it to the top 5. I see now why the Morningstar sponsored him. If only he had scored an average in the light affinity trial, he would have been the first ranker. Such a shame. Don't sleep on his giant brother. The dude carried more than 200 kilograms on a 5-kilometer hike. None of you can comprehend how difficult that is. While their performances are amazing on their own, at the end of the day, Nura and Demetrius possess the highest light affinity. The network buzzed with tweets, hashtags, and clips of the 4 candidates. Yet, the highest-rated one belonged to Levi's hill, slide, and water glide. Citizens were already used to daywalkers performing wonders. Yet, Levi's clip still farmed the most likes and attention, surpassing some famous daywalker celebrities. The people simply loved it when one of their own did something noteworthy. It made them feel represented in a merciless era dominated by daywalkers and nightcrawlers. Big bro, we're trending. Arthur grinned widely as he read the positive comments about him and his brother. I see. Levi gave an unbothered smile. While it felt good to be recognized, Levi never chased fame. He understood that chasing it was like chasing an endless hunger. It could never be satisfied. So he welcomed it, but didn't give it much thought. However, the same couldn't be said for the other youthful candidates dreaming of becoming famous daywalkers, basking in public praise. Some are on this path for that reason alone. Believe it or not, Demetrius was one of them. Where did this bastard crawl from? Demetrius glared at Levi coldly. I was supposed to have the best rookie debut. Everyone was going to talk about me, and only me. Sensing the glare, Levi turned and gave him his usual serene, kind smile. A look that would have melted any petty grudge, but not Demetrius. It only made him angrier. Just wait. This will be the last time you steal the spotlight. Enjoy it while it lasts, he murmured icily, heading toward the apartment complex. He thought no one heard him, but Levi's weaponized ears caught every word. I kind of feel bad for him, Levi sighed inwardly. He's in for a world of disappointment. After Instructor Seraphis exited the boundless expense, the first thing he did was contact his old pal, Lord Idris. He hadn't made a scene about Levi's situation earlier, but now, after realizing that the boy might be the real deal, he needed to figure out what was going on. A couple of rings later, Lord Idris emerged as a holographic figure in front of Seraphis. Will you look at that? Lionheart reaching out on his own? What kind of sorcery is this? Lord Idris joked, his tone and demeanor nothing like when Levi met him. You old barbarian, you know I retired that name decades ago. Instructor Seraphis smiled, his hand resting on the sun amulet near his belt. A shame, truly, Lord Idris sighed, visibly displeased with Instructor Seraphis' decision. but at the same time, he understood the reasons behind it. What do you mean it's a shame? If I hadn't retired, the streets would have been packed with good-for-nothing daywalkers. Instructor Seraphis chuckled. I'm doing your region a great favor, you know? Don't say that, Lord Idris said solemnly. This is your second home, not my region. I wish it were that simple. Instructor Seraphis forced a half-smile, but soon he cut straight to the point. Idris, I called about that young boy. He said curiously, just what the hell happened? It's nothing much. My daughter swindled a recommendation letter for the boy. Lord Idris chuckled. We handed it to her, believing she was going to recruit Arthur, but in reality, they were all in on it to ensure that boy entered the assembly. Huh? Why go through all that trouble? Aren't they brothers? Isn't getting one sponsored the same as sponsoring both? Seraphis asked, confused. That's the thing. Levi Larson isn't allowed to join the assembly through normal procedures. How come? Does he have a criminal record? No. Lord Idris dropped the bomb. He's blind. He's what now? Instructor Seraphis tilted his head in disbelief, thinking he must have misheard. Blind? The idea just wouldn't register. Alas, Lord Idris doubled down. Yes, as shocking as it sounds after witnessing his performance, it's the truth. You mean legally blind? Is that why he wears glasses? Are they prescribed? No, he's blind, but he can see some things, like tunnel vision or a... Seraphis, he has no eyes. Well, that did the trick. Silence fell over Instructor Seraphis as tens of Levi's moments replayed in his head. When he now looked at them through the lens of blindness, his behavior suddenly made sense. The way his head never truly faced forward. The fact that no one had seen his eyes, not even once, as they were always hidden behind sunglasses or thick bangs. Then he recalled how Levi had scored 1 point in the trial of light affinity. Impossible. If he had no eyes, the luminous right wouldn't have activated. Rewatch the tape, and you'll understand what he did to pull off that measly 1 point everyone's mocking. Seraphis requested Astra AI to replay the footage of Levi standing on the luminous right. This time, he focused solely on Levi. When he saw the boy mutter something under his breath, and then watched as the right's light weakened, his pupils narrowed. Don't tell me. Yep, Lord Idris confirmed. To avoid instant elimination from your new rule, the boy must have figured out the right incantation to activate the luminous right. Then he analyzed it and used an incantation that tested his body instead of his eyes. No wonder he scored 1 point and refused to retry. The incantation must have been partial, only activating a portion of the right. Instructor Seraphis was stunned. Everything finally started to make sense. But instead of feeling settled, he was dragged into a storm of new questions. Why would a blind boy participate in the assembly? How could he move like that with no vision? How did he pull off the switch on the luminous right? That incantation wasn't public knowledge. What was his full story? Too many questions, and he knew only Levi could answer them. Not wanting to waste more of Lord Idris' time, he thanked him for the intel and was about to end the call. Before you go, can I add one thing? Sure. Regardless of what you decide to do with him, I hope you still give him a chance, Lord Idris said calmly. The boy may have swindled a recommendation letter, but I wholeheartedly support him and his brother. Why's that? Instructor Seraphis raised an eyebrow, surprised. He knew his old partner never got involved with new generations of daywalkers unless they were truly exceptional. While Levi's physical performance was impressive, Seraphis didn't think it would be enough to convince a nightcrawler to sign him, especially if the truth came out. All I can say is, you've yet to see the best of him, Lord Idris said. The least you can do is let him finish the assembly. Whether he gets signed or not, you'll lose nothing, but he won't have to look back and regret anything. You know as well as I do, it only ends badly when a child is robbed of their only shot. Instructor Seraphis went quiet, then nodded. He understood. If Levi's condition came to light and he failed the assembly, it could leave him vulnerable, easy prey for the nightcrawlers. And Seraphis had vowed, never again. Not under his watch. I'll see what I can do. Back in the apartment complex, Levi, Arthur, Jojo, Melissa, and Ryan were all gathered inside Levi's room. It was spacious and had a bedroom, a toilet, a small kitchen, and an empty central hall. The girls were sitting comfortably on the bed while the boys had no issue chilling on the floor. They had bottles of soda and some snacks placed at the center. While it wasn't a five-star hotel suite, it was 10 times better than the rooms on the lower floors. I'm so envious. You guys have a kitchen stocked with food and a private toilet, Ryan complained as he recalled his cramped, bare-bones bedroom. Although he was ranked within the top 20, his room was nothing like this. The top 10 rankers were given these suites, while the rest had standardized one-bedroom units and a stash of bland army rations to get through the day. You still did well. You climbed from the middle of the list to the top 20. Melissa offered support. It sounds patronizing while sitting next to a guy who came first after starting 3 minutes late. Ryan muttered, his eyelids twitching as he glanced at Levi. Don't think too much of it. Levi smiled. If any of you had a shield or something safe enough to slide on, you would have scored much higher than me. That's the thing. Jojo shook her head. There were chairs at the top for that kind of slide, and none of us thought of it. True. It's really hard to think outside the box during a race, Ryan admitted with a sigh. After the trial ended, everyone had taken time to review the gauntlet footage. They realized Instructor Seraphis wasn't lying. The chairs at the top of the slope were clearly set up to be used for something creative, like Levi's slide. While they had been bolted down, a bit of time and effort could have pried them loose. But how could anyone spare the time or focus to do that in the middle of a high-stakes race? Anyway, I'm just glad that Levi and Arthur came first and second in the trial. Ryan smiled, lifting his soda can for a toast. As long as it's someone from our little squad, a win is a win. A win is a win. Arthur and the others echoed the cheer, lifting their cans in unison. While everyone took a normal sip, Arthur downed his entire can in one go, then crushed it with one hand and let out a thunderous burp. Jojo responded by hurling a pillow at him in disgust. Oh, that tastes as refreshing as the real deal. Arthur sighed with satisfaction, casually placing the pillow under his but like a cushion, completely ignoring Jojo's irritated glare. The ultimate authority to create whatever. How magical. Levi murmured as he traced the shape of his water bottle with a light touch of his fingers. Levi knew that the boundless expanse was an enigma, just like its ruler, Nocturne. Even his name wasn't real. People only called him that because of the infamous nocturnal contract. The only thing confirmed was that his boundless realm served as neutral ground for almost anything, as long as the price was paid. Levi had no clue what the Solar Aegis Sanctuary offered in return for a week-long rent of a small zone within the expanse, but he suspected the government paid in crystallized seeds. As his thoughts wandered through the depths of this bizarre concept, Astra AI pinged in his mind, informing him that Instructor Seraphis was calling. Levi wasn't surprised. He had anticipated this moment, expected Instructor Seraphis to dig into him after what he had pulled in both trials. After informing his brother and friends that he needed to take a private call, Levi quietly moved to his brother's room. He sat cross-legged on the bed and accepted the connection. A moment later, Instructor Seraphis spoke in a calm tone. Turn on the holographic call. I can't, Levi responded. Why? I have no lens on my eye. Why? Because I have no eyes, Levi said, composed and steady. Instructor Seraphis went silent for a beat. Then, Levi heard a sudden gust of air swirl from the right side. He turned his head instinctively, and through his spiritual vision, he saw it, a magnificent golden-haired lion radiating charisma and pride. Its mane was thick and regal, flowing like silk around its paws. Amber eyes pierced through the void, locking on Levi as if sizing up an unknown species. Its tail curled behind it, ending in a reversed cross of fur, resembling a double-edged sword. Then the lion spoke. Its voice was deep and solemn, the tone of a sovereign. So it's true. You are missing your eyes. Yes, Levi nodded. How interesting. The lion gave a small, entertained smile before vanishing from the bridge of spiritual darkness. Yet he wasn't gone. The moment his physical form faded, a powerful golden aura took its place. Instructor Seraphis had arrived. Hello, sir, Levi greeted, bowing slightly toward the window, where he sensed the instructor now stood. "You can see me?" "Yes, my spiritual vision is a bit better than the norm," Levi explained. "A bit." Instructor Seraphis raised a brow, surprised. Is this what Idris meant? He knew that even warden-level daywalkers couldn't casually see spiritual auras unless they were psych specialists. For someone Levi's age to possess a spiritual sense that clear, it demanded both extraordinary talent and relentless training. The realization only drew Seraphis in deeper. "Since you're being honest, I assume you're reasonable enough to understand why I came." "I do," Levi nodded. "Good. Let's talk about what you did in the first trial. Be honest. I could have you disqualified for tampering." Instructor Seraphis folded his arms as he made his way to the kitchen. He grabbed a water bottle from the counter, leaned against the frame, and waited for an explanation. "I used Astra AI to scan the Iothorian inscriptions," Levi began calmly. "Then I went through them line by line until my name was called. I locked onto what I believed to be the most likely incantation and created a modified version to shift the test's focus. The real incantation wasn't accessible, but what I used activated part of the luminous rite. I got lucky." "I see." Although Seraphis maintained a neutral tone, he was quietly impressed. He knew that parsing Iothorian required more than just intelligence. It demanded dedication and a deep grasp of an ancient language. Even if luck had played a part, Levi's analytical skill was beyond rare. "How did you come to understand Iothorian at that level?" "My late mother taught me when I was young," Levi said softly. "I became obsessed with it from that point on." Instructor Seraphis paused. He had read Levi's private file before this meeting. He knew about the murder of his parents at the hands of nightcrawlers. He had prepared for this call, but hearing it from Levi still left an ache in his chest. "She must have been brilliant. The smartest person I've ever known." Levi smiled faintly, a wave of old warmth passing through his memory. "Is that why you're attempting to become a daywalker despite your condition?" Seraphis asked. "Are you driven by revenge?" Levi shook his head, which surprised the instructor more than he expected. "My parents meant everything to me, and the way they were taken, I'll never make peace with it," Levi said, voice calm but firm. "Still, I'm not chasing revenge. I just want to set my heart at ease again, whatever it takes." "Is that too much to ask?" "No, I hear you," Instructor Seraphis murmured. He looked down at his sun amulet, fingers curling around it absently. It was rare for him to reveal any vulnerability. He was known for being stern, cold, even. But in front of Levi, he let that wall down. Maybe because Levi couldn't see his face, or maybe, just maybe, because he could tell that Levi understood. Levi listened to the subtle fluctuations in Seraphis' heartbeat. Slow, uneven, tinged with something unspoken. Pain. Something deep. Something jagged. He didn't comment on it. He knew that to sense the cracks in someone's heart was to peek into their sanctum, and he had no right to cross that line. A moment later, Seraphis composed himself again. "As sweet as revenge may seem, just know it won't set your heart free. What's done is done, even if we hate to accept it." "I'll keep that in mind, sir." Levi nodded appreciatively. He didn't necessarily agree, but he respected the advice. In Levi's eyes, the only way to know if revenge would free him was to follow it through. The agony, the grief, the endless rage inside him, they needed an outlet. And Levi would rather embrace a hollow peace than keep that storm locked away. Sensing Levi's inner resolve, Seraphis sighed. "I see your younger self in him," said a deep voice in his head. "I do too." "Unfortunately," Seraphis replied telepathically. "Shoba, I'm beginning to think revenge is linear, inescapable." "You're looking at it the wrong way, old friend," the lion answered. "Revenge is a survival instinct. It's a coping mechanism, nothing more. When someone has been dealt deep, irreparable harm, and no thought of revenge crosses his mind, his spirit breaks. Forgiveness, rising above it, those are divine traits, Seraphis. You can't fake them, and you sure as hell can't expect a child to carry them when even you have failed." Seraphis fell silent. Kshoba was right, as always, and the truth cut him deep. He wanted to rise above his hatred, to purge it from his soul. But no matter how hard he tried, it still sat there, gnawing away at him like a ghost he could never exorcise. Shoba didn't press further. He could feel his friend's burden, the slow decay of a soul trapped between the desire for vengeance and the pull of morality. Three perspectives now lingered in the room like ghosts. One who understood the need for revenge, one who longed to transcend it, one who chased it to reclaim peace. Each was valid. Each was flawed. If revenge had a single answer, it wouldn't be a timeless debate of the heart and mind. Eventually, Instructor Seraphis cleared his throat, and with it, shifted the tone. Let's get to the heart of it. If you're blind and contractless, how the hell are you able to move the way you do? He narrowed his eyes on Levi, watching his every twitch, every pause, waiting to catch a lie. But Levi only smiled. I think it's easier if I show you.